out your cat for the Riddler. You're so skibbity, you're so phantom tax. I just wanna be your Sigma. Freaking come here, give me your Ohio. Sticking out your cat for the Riddler. You're so skibbity, you're so phantom tax. I just wanna be your Sigma.
He remembered his mom's words, telling him to do what he wanted. As an S-rank hunter, Jin-Woo would be able to save people as his dad did. His dad was a firefighter before he became a hunter, and his mom fell in love with him because he loved saving people. She also told Jin-Woo not to overdo it, and these memories made Jin-Woo a little relieved, knowing that his mom was not against him becoming a hunter. Jin-Woo sensed that if there weren't too many monsters in this dungeon, he could clear it in one day. Go forth. Jin-Woo summoned his shadow warriors, and giant forest guardian monsters began emerging from their hiding spots, triggering a fierce battle. The shadow mage cast fire magic from a distance. Igris stabs a monster right in the head with his sword. Iron goes wild, smashing monsters with his axe, while Tusk and Tank scorch the monsters with their fire magic. Barry goes on a rampage, brutally tearing through monsters with ease. After clearing the area of monsters, Jin paused, his thoughts lingering for a moment. A hunter was born to hunt. Monsters aren't the only enemy for a hunter. Hunters have to be careful so that they don't get hunted as well. So first-rate hunters can't put their guard down even more. Even if there are hundreds of thousands of hunts, the hunt will never end. Let's move on to the next target. With that resolve, Jin-Woo stepped forward into the forest, his determination unshaken as he moved to confront the dungeon boss. The scene shifts to America, where a hunter is trapped in a high-level dungeon. Fear fills his face as a mysterious figure appears before him. It's Frost Monarch, a creature whose presence alone chills the air and creates an oppressive atmosphere. Moments later, a gate opens, revealing Yogimunt, the Transfiguration Monarch. Frost Monarch glares at Yogimunt, questioning his purpose. Yogimunt explains that he brings news about the small territory in the east, the place where the Shadow Monarch resides. He also mentions that the rulers seem to be trying to free something in the southern Legia, and he needs to head there right away. Yogimunt adds that someone has been confirmed as the greatest fragment of brilliant light, and they're also in that area. Frost Monarch grinned, declaring his intent to deal with that person himself. Suddenly, Frost Monarch senses another powerful presence, coming from the fragment of brilliant light. It's Sung Il-hwan, Jin-Woo's father. Il-hwan stares them down, demanding to know more about the small territory in the east, which they're referring to as Korea. Yogimunt decides it's time to leave, not wanting to waste time dealing with him. Meanwhile, Frost Monarch provokes him, daring him to chase them if he's capable. Not willing to let them get away, Il-hwan quickly launches an attack. But Frost Monarch blocks it effortlessly with his ice wall magic, creating a huge explosion that shakes the area. At the Red Gate, Jin-Woo finally came face to face with the dungeon boss. The monster carried himself with arrogance, acknowledging Jin-Woo's strength for wiping out his entire horde and even daring to face him alone. The dungeon boss ordered his remaining monsters to emerge, but strangely, nothing appeared. Confusion was evident on his face. Jin-Woo found the monsters' reaction amusing. He commanded his shadow army to reveal themselves. Moments later, the shadows emerged from the bushes, dragging the corpses of the defeated monsters behind them. The dungeon boss's face twisted with rage, but before he could react, Jin-Woo ordered his army to eliminate the remaining monsters. A fierce battle erupted. The Shadow Army charged forward as the surviving monsters desperately tried to resist. Iron and the High Orc General cut through them with ease, slaughtering the monsters without mercy. Meanwhile, a few monsters attempted to strike Jin-Woo directly, but Tank lunged forward, protecting him and tearing the attackers apart with his sharp claws. The dungeon boss began to lose control. But before he could release his fury, Beru and Igris struck with incredible speed, severing his left leg and right arm, causing him to collapse, helpless. Tusk followed up with his gravity magic, forcing the dungeon boss to the ground with crushing pressure, rendering him completely immobile. Jin-Woo slowly approached the defeated monster, his gaze cold and unyielding. He warned the dungeon boss to answer his questions or suffer even greater pain. But before the monster could utter a word, he collapsed and died. Jin-Woo sighed, realizing the system had interfered once again, preventing him from getting the answers he sought. Determined to uncover the truth himself, Jin-Woo retrieved a key from his inventory. Having reached level 100, he was finally able to view its details. The description read, Kargalgan Temple Key. This key allows the user to enter the Kargalgan Temple. It can be used at the designated gate, and the gate's location will be revealed after a predetermined time. Remaining time, 417 hours. Seeing the key triggered memories of the double dungeon incident from his past. Jin-Woo realized the system was leading him back to where everything began. But this time, he was certain things would be different. If this had all been orchestrated from the very start, he vowed to face whatever awaited him at the Kargalgan Temple, no matter the cost. In Jin-Woo's guild office, Jin-Ho was busy playing the role of a keyboard warrior, responding to the online slander aimed at Jin-Woo. After finishing his work, he leaned back, feeling relieved and satisfied for clearing Jin-Woo's name. Suddenly, Jin-Woo appeared behind him without a sound, startling Jin-Ho, who hadn't noticed his arrival. Jin-Woo handed him a bag full of high-grade magic crystals and asked him to sell them to help build the new guild. Jin-Ho felt pleased, knowing this would ease their future worker salary worries. He then reminded Jin-Woo that they needed more members to establish the guild and asked if he had decided on a name for it. Jin-Woo realized they didn't have a name yet and suggested Solo Guild, considering the guild would focus on solo hunts. Jin-Ho was taken aback and thought the name sounded ridiculous, though he couldn't argue, since Jin-Woo always fought alone. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Jin-Ho opened it and was shocked to see Hunter Cha, an S-rank hunter from Korea. Jin-Woo asked why she had come. Hunter Cha responded that she wanted to join their guild. Jin-Woo invited Hunter Cha inside and asked her to clarify her earlier statement. Calmly, she confirmed that she was interested in joining their guild. Jin-Woo was surprised and asked if Hunter Choi had kicked her out of his guild. Hunter Cha clarified that she had not been expelled. With a serious expression, Jin-Woo asked what her real reason for wanting to join was, since their guild wasn't capable of paying someone of her rank. Hunter Cha hesitated, searching internally for the right justification. She vividly recalled her initial encounter with Jin-Woo, where his unique scent had made a lasting impression on her. Intrigued by him, she had discreetly investigated his background. Her research revealed that Jin-Woo was not a malevolent person, and she felt a profound sense of gratitude for his heroic actions in rescuing her during the raid on Jeju Island. Her face flushed red, and in her mind she thought, she really hopes Jin-Woo will be with her until the end, but she was too embarrassed to say it. She feared Jin-Woo might think she was crazy. Jin-Woo, as clueless as ever, noticed her flushed face and grew suspicious she was hiding something. He pressed her again, more seriously this time, asking why she wanted to join. Still shy, Hunter Cha replied, "I just want to live comfortably. Is that not allowed?" Jin-Woo was surprised by her response. Meanwhile, Jin-Ho whispered, wondering what Jin-Woo had done to make her act so strangely. Jin-Woo, still confused, figured the pressure of being an S-rank hunter at such a young age might be getting to her. To change the subject, Jin-Woo then mentioned that their guild had a registration test, which surprised Jin-Ho with the lie. But before he could say anything, Jin-Woo cut him off and told him to go buy drinks and snacks. Hunter Cha then asked what kind of test she needed to take. Jin-Woo suggested she face off against one of his strongest shadow soldiers. Taking the challenge seriously, Hunter Cha immediately asked when the test would begin. Jin-Woo replied that it would happen right away in the Hunter Association's gym. For a moment, Jin-Woo considered testing his shadow exchange ability to see if it could work with more than one person. As Cha moved to open the door, Jin-Woo stopped her. Stepping closer, he wrapped an arm around her and said there was an easier way to get there. Jin-Woo activated his shadow exchange skill, and both of them were enveloped in black shadows and vanished. Meanwhile, Jin-Ho returned with the snacks, only to be stunned as he found both of them gone, replaced by one of Jin-Woo's shadow soldiers standing in the room. Moments later, Jin-Woo and Hunter Cha had already arrived at the Hunter Association's gym. Hunter Cha was shocked by the sudden move, while Jin-Woo realized that this scenario had gone exactly as he expected. He thought about his shadow exchange ability, which allowed him to teleport with others using his shadow soldiers as intermediaries, like a gate that could take him anywhere, as long as there was a shadow soldier to act as a destination. Jin-Woo then suggested starting the test, but Hunter Cha pointed out that she didn't have her weapon. Jin-Woo assumed she meant a pickaxe, which made Hunter Cha embarrassed. She clarified it wasn't her weapon. She decided to borrow a weapon from the gym storage, using her ID card to access the Hunter Association's locker, choosing a sword and preparing for the spar. Jin-Woo summoned Igris, explaining that he was the best swordsman among his soldiers. He set a simple rule: Hunter Cha had to defeat the summon to win, and giving up meant losing. Though Jin-Woo considered summoning Beru, he decided against it, fearing it might be too much for Hunter Cha, who might still be traumatized from their previous fight. Hunter Cha took her stance, her sword glowing with magical energy. Seeing her aura, Jin-Woo was surprised and asked her to turn around for a moment. Swiftly, Jin-Woo took the Demon King longsword from his inventory and handed it to Igris. The sword was now in the Shadow Soldier's hands, ready for battle. Igris started the fight with a powerful slash, his sword crackling with lightning that shattered the gym floor. But Hunter Cha dodged it nimbly and immediately counterattacked, which Igris parried with ease, creating a powerful wave that shook the gym area. Jin-Woo watched intently, impressed by her skill. In his office, Chairman Mr. Go felt a powerful surge of energy coming from the gym. Realizing that a sparring match was taking place, he contacted his staff to display the gym's camera footage in his office. On the screen, he saw Jin-Woo and Hunter Cha fighting. He wondered when they had arrived and recalled Hunter Cha's strange behavior after the Jeju Island raid. Mr. Go began to suspect that Hunter Cha might have feelings for Jin-Woo. He then ordered the cameras to be turned off and to ensure there were no inspections that day. Suddenly, a huge tremor shook his office, indicating the battle in the gym had reached a critical point. Back in the gym, Igris had already been defeated by Hunter Cha. Jin-Woo was taken aback by how quickly Igris was beaten. Hunter Cha expressed doubt about the strength of the summoned Shadow Knights and urged Jin-Woo to summon the Ant King to fight her. Jin-Woo hesitated, warning that Hunter Cha could get hurt if he summoned Beru. But Hunter Cha insisted, showing her determination to face the ant once more. Jin-Woo reluctantly summoned Beru. Though Beru had weakened slightly after becoming a shadow soldier, he was still a lethal weapon designed to hunt hunters. Beru asked Jin-Woo what he should do. Jin-Woo ordered him to defeat Hunter Cha without causing harm. Beru acknowledged and unleashed a wave of magical energy that shattered all the lights in the room. From a distance, Hunter Cha felt a sense of unease. She wondered how Jin-Woo could command such a monster. Beru prepared to strike with his sharp claws, but Jin-Woo immediately warned him not to use them, emphasizing that if Hunter Cha got hurt, Beru would be the one to pay. Beru, puzzled but obedient, held back. From a distance, Hunter Cha stared at Beru with sharp eyes, contemplating the vast difference in power between them. As she thought about it, Beru suddenly appeared behind her. Surprised, she quickly swung her sword, but Beru stopped it effortlessly with one hand. Hunter Cha continued attacking with rapid sword strikes, but Beru easily dodged every blow. Hunter Cha was astonished that Beru could avoid all her attacks without even moving from his spot. In an instant, Beru stood in front of Hunter Cha, roaring directly in her face, sending her flying backward from the force. Seeing this, Jin-Woo declared that the fight was over and asked if Hunter Cha was satisfied. Despite being clearly overwhelmed, Hunter Cha refused to give up and insisted on continuing. Jin-Woo was puzzled, unable to understand why Hunter Cha was pushing herself so hard, despite having no chance of winning against Beru. He realized that Beru was different from the other shadow soldiers. Besides being intelligent, he was a lethal weapon, and he knew Beru was holding back to avoid killing Hunter Cha. Meanwhile, Hunter Cha stared at Beru with intense eyes, triggering Beru's predator instinct. Feeling insulted, Beru lunged at her with his claws. However, Hunter Cha managed to dodge, activated her sword dance, leaping into the air to strike Beru, but Beru quickly stopped her sword and crushed it in his hand. Undeterred, Hunter Cha activated her blade of light, creating a light sword strike, which managed to pierce Beru's body. However, the attack triggered Beru's killing instincts, reminding him of the Queen Ant's command to exterminate the enemy, and this woman was his foe. Jin-Woo, realizing this, immediately ordered Beru to stop. But Beru, having lost control, prepared to finish off Hunter Cha with a fatal strike. Hunter Cha closed her eyes, awaiting her end. In a flash, Jin-Woo moved and stopped Beru's attack just in time. Beru quickly stepped back, bowing and begging for forgiveness from his master. Jin-Woo looked at Hunter Cha and asked why she was pushing herself so hard, even risking her life for an entrance test to a nameless guild. Hunter Cha stayed quiet, not answering. He pressed her again, more seriously this time, saying, "Perhaps, you're interested in me?" Hunter Cha was shocked by the question. After a moment of hesitation, she admitted her feelings, her face turning red with embarrassment. The scene shifts to the United States Bureau of Hunters, where Michael and Mrs. Sellner stand facing David Brennan, the director of the Bureau. Michael apologizes, feeling ashamed about the earlier incident involving Sung Jin-Woo. However, David firmly states that he didn't summon them for apologies. He demands an explanation of what actually happened. Michael explains that based on Mrs. Sellner's earlier observations, she identified Sung Jin-Woo as one of the kings. David, his gaze sharp, asks Mrs. Sellner for a more detailed explanation. He questions whether this means Jin-Woo's power rivals that of a national-level hunter. Mrs. Sellner clarifies that all awakened hunters are connected to the other side, and she can perceive this connection. Awakened individuals who gain immense power from the other side are surrounded by a brilliant light. She refers to them as kings. However, when observing Jin-Woo, she saw no such light. Instead, she only saw darkness, and that darkness originated solely from him. David, taken aback by this revelation, asks if this darkness signifies that Jin-Woo is evil. Mrs. Sellner cautiously explains that it's not about good or evil. The darkness is the source of his power, an extraordinary strength that doesn't come from the other side but is entirely his own and limitless. Rising from his chair, David approaches Mrs. Sellner, thanking her for the valuable information. He then instructs Michael to follow him to the 24th basement floor. Inside the elevator, David reveals his plan to Michael. If Mrs. Sellner's abilities fail, they will resort to alternative measures to secure Sung Jin-Woo. David reminds Michael of the S-rank gate incident that devastated the western United States. During that time, America offered an immense reward to the 5 strongest hunters who survived the catastrophe. That event marked the emergence of a monster with national-level power, the inextinguishable flame, the dragon Kamish. This terrifying creature claimed the lives of dozens of elite hunters before it was defeated. Yet, Kamish left behind something far more valuable than destruction. Upon reaching a heavily guarded special chamber, David opens a thick door. Inside lies the rune stone from Kamish's corpse, perfectly preserved over the past 8 years. David regards it as a priceless legacy that no national-level hunter has witnessed firsthand since then. Nearby, Kamish's meticulously preserved skull rests, a majestic relic of the tragic event that shook the world. In his apartment, Jin-Woo stands before a mirror, noticing changes in his appearance. He looks taller and more handsome than before, prompting a moment of reflection. He then approaches his younger sister, Ji-na, and asks for her opinion on his appearance. Ji-na, surprised, and responds with confusion, wondering where this newfound confidence comes from. A playful sibling quarrel ensues. Jin-Woo ends the argument by mentioning his plan to establish a guild, naming it Solo Guild. However, Ji-na finds the name odd, pointing out that with his ability to summon numerous shadow soldiers, it's technically not solo. Though mildly annoyed, Jin-Woo admits she has a point and asks for another suggestion. Ji-na proposes Ajin Guild, combining her name with a phrase meaning, "I move forward." Jin-Woo agrees, finding the name more meaningful. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Hunter Cha is lost in thought, replaying the events of the gym test at the Hunters Association. Her face flushes each time she recalls the moment, and she tosses and turns on her bed, restless. She worries that Jin-Woo might now see her as strange. Yet, she tries to reassure herself that her feelings are justified, given that Jin-Woo once saved her life. Suddenly, she's drawn into her subconscious. There, she sees the shadow of Min Byung-yu reaching out to her. The shadow, appearing fearful, pleads with her to deliver an urgent message to Jin-Woo. He must be cautious with his power. Cha abruptly awakens, certain that what she experienced was no mere illusion. The scene shifts to the Knights Guild office. Guild Master Park Jong-soo receives a report about a large A-rank gate that has appeared in their territory. However, tackling such a gate requires at least one S-rank hunter on the raid team, which frustrates him as it would mean relinquishing the raid rights to another guild. One of his members suggests seeking Sung Jin-Woo's assistance. After some thought, Jong-soo deems the idea reasonable. Collaborating with Jin-Woo would not only protect the Knights Guild's reputation as one of the major guilds, but also ensure a safe raid. He decides to approach Jin-Woo directly at his new guild's office. At Jin-Woo's guild office, he proposes Ajin Guild as the name for their newly established guild. Jin-Ho seems to prefer this over Solo Guild, and they settle on the name. They then discuss recruiting founding members. Jin-Ho brings up Hunter Cha's recent visit, but Jin-Woo explains that she doesn't meet the criteria he's looking for. Surprised, Jin-Ho questions what kind of individual Jin-Woo wants. Jin-Woo reveals that he's looking for someone trustworthy who isn't overly concerned with guild activities. Their conversation is interrupted by a thunderous knock at the door. Jin-Woo opens it and finds Guild Master Park Jong-soo and two of his members standing there, their faces twisted like they just swallowed a bug. Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho exchange bewildered glances, unsure whether to welcome them or call the police. After an awkward pause, they were invited to step inside and begin the discussion. Jong-soo shows them a video of the massive gate that recently appeared in their region. Jin-Woo asks if it's an S-rank gate, but Jong-soo explains that the association classified it as A-rank. However, the unstable magical energy it emits and its enormous size, the largest ever seen in Busan, raise doubts about the accuracy of the classification. Since the Knights Guild lacks an S-rank hunter, the association won't permit them to conduct the raid. Thus, Jong-soo proposes a partnership with Jin-Woo, offering 20% of the raid's profits as compensation. Jin-Woo firmly counters with a 50-50 split, emphasizing that the partnership must be guild to guild, as he has just founded the Ajin Guild. Jong-soo attempts to negotiate a 40-60th split, but Jin-Woo stands his ground, refusing to collaborate unless his terms are met. After a quick pause, Jong-soo points out that Jin-Woo's got a weird vibe, even though he's pretty young. He decides to go for it, but only if Jin-Woo can beat the dungeon boss. Jin-Woo's cool with it, and they seal the deal with a handshake. Jong-soo mentions that the raid begins the next day and offers Jin-Woo a ride to the gate's distant location. Jin-Woo declines, citing unfinished business that evening. As Jong-soo and his team depart, Jin-Woo discreetly sends a shadow soldier into Jong-soo's shadow. The next day, hunters gather in front of the massive gate on Busan's coast. The Knights Guild members, clad in luxurious gear, prepare for the raid. Jong-soo keeps glancing nervously at his phone's clock. Only 5 minutes remain until the raid starts, but Jin-Woo is nowhere to be seen. He regrets not escorting Jin-Woo directly the day before. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo stands in his apartment, gazing at the overcast sky through the window. He wonders if Jin-Ah remembered to bring an umbrella to school. After a brief moment of contemplation, he decides it's time to leave. Activating his shadow exchange skill, his body is enveloped in darkness and slowly vanishes. The scene shifts to Jinna's school, where 3 students walk down a hallway toward an unused room to retrieve a statue. When they step inside, they find rows of dusty statues lined up, but in the corner of the room, a gate has appeared. One of the braver students steps up to the gate and explains that a closed gate like this isn't dangerous yet. It usually takes about a week to fully open, so the monsters inside won't come out anytime soon. Meanwhile, the 2 other students behind him wonder whether the gate just appeared or has been there for some time. Suddenly, the gate fractures, and a monstrous hand bursts out. grabbing the brave student's head and lifting him into the air. He cries for help, but in a flash, his head is crushed, leaving the other two students frozen in terror. And in the blink of an eye, the two remaining students were lying on the floor covered in blood, showing just how fierce the orcs were. Orcs are natural hunters with lower intelligence than humans, but their sharp instincts make them deadly trackers. One of the orcs scans the area and notices the building's maze-like structure. It looks like a castle filled with humans to hunt. He decides to begin the hunt and orders the others to call for reinforcements. The orcs started hunting, and they slaughtered all the humans they came across. The scene shifts to an A-rank gate in Busan, where Jin-Woo has just arrived and notices that the gate looks much larger up close. He observes how well-organized the Knights Guild is, with their collection team, mining team, and strike team, consisting of 13 A-rank hunters and 20 B-rank hunters. Suddenly, the hunters on site swarm around Jin-Woo, showering him with praise for his success during the Jeju Island raid and eagerly asking if he'll be leading this raid himself. A young woman steps in to stop the commotion. It's Jong Yirim, the main healer of the Knights Guild strike team. Shortly after, Jong-soo arrives and clarifies that he'll be the one leading the raid, while Jin-Woo's role is simply to protect them during the operation. Hearing this, a few hunters start grumbling, questioning why the guildmaster always insists on leading and wondering if they're considered so weak that they need Jin-Woo's protection. One hunter, particularly cocky, boldly asks Jin-Woo if he really thinks the elite Knights Guild members are so feeble that they need his help. Jong-soo quickly steps in, explaining to Jin-Woo that his team can be a bit rough around the edges, but this is just how things work in the Knights Guild. Checking his phone, Jong-soo raises his voice and commands the team to begin the raid. The scene shifts to the Hunter Association office, where a female dispatcher answers an emergency call. A panicked schoolgirl is on the line, saying that a horde of monsters has appeared at her school and is hunting people. Trying to calm her down, the dispatcher reassures her that hunters are on their way to save her. She then asks the girl to describe the monsters. Stammering through her words, the girl says they look like humans but with hideous faces and green skin. The description instantly clicks. The monsters are orcs. Panicked, she tells the girl to run because orcs can smell their prey. Unfortunately, there was the sound of something falling on the phone, followed by a long scream that suddenly stopped. This left an eerie silence for the dispatcher who heard it. The school was in chaos. Students were running out, trying to escape, while those trapped inside were relentlessly hunted by the orc monsters. With a threatening voice, they discussed how half of the school had already been taken, and how they would move to the upper floor to slaughter the remaining humans. On the upper floors, a group of students barricades themselves inside a classroom, stacking desks and chairs against the door. But the orcs easily tear through, shattering the barricade. The students freeze, paralyzed with fear, as a towering orc steps into the room, blood-stained sword in hand. One student tries to escape through another door, only to be cut down by an orc waiting outside. The monsters sneer, mocking the humans' terror, ready to unleash more carnage. In the corner, Jinna and Songi found themselves trapped in the same situation. Jinna was paralyzed with fear, constantly calling out to her older brother in her mind. Songi, trying to muster some courage, reminds herself she's a hunter, even if she's only E-rank. But Jinna tried to stop her. Meanwhile, two orc monsters locked their gaze on them. One of them sensed a faint magical energy from Jinna. Without hesitation, the orc swung its axe to attack. Jinna and Songi trembled, resigned to their fate. Suddenly, a shadow-high orc appeared, blocking the orc's attack. It was a shadow warrior hidden in Jinna's shadow. Jinna was shocked but felt a little relief, realizing that the shadow creature belonged to her older brother. The shadow-high orc counterattacked, striking the orc so hard it went through the school's roof. Two more shadow-high orcs emerged, ready to protect their master's little sister. The scene shifts back to the raid in Busan, where the hunters have entered a dungeon that looks like the ruins of an ancient tomb. Soon, they come face to face with a twin-headed ogre. Jong-soo warns everyone to stay alert. Suddenly, the monster charges, swinging its massive axe. Jong-soo quickly activates a protective spell, successfully blocking the attack. One of the hunters dashes up the monster's body, slashing its two eyes. As the creature loses its sight, two other hunters move in, slicing off its arms. From behind, the hunter mages start casting spells, unleashing fire and lightning magic that strikes the monster, causing it to collapse instantly. Jong-soo then tells Jin-Woo that this raid won't be easy. If they're already facing twin-headed ogres at the start, the next challenge will be an army of undead. As predicted, hundreds of undead monsters appear before them. The hunters immediately prepare for battle. However, the undead hesitate, unsure of whether to attack. The hunters notice something strange. Normally, they would rush in to attack at the first sight of the enemy, but now they seem to be afraid of something. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo thinks this might be boring. He'd hoped for a fight with higher-level monsters in this dungeon. He wonders if he should have brought his mom along for the extra challenge. Suddenly, he feels a strong signal from the shadow soldier he placed on Jinna, signaling a bad feeling about his sister's situation. Jin-Woo tells Jong-soo he has to leave immediately. There's an urgent issue he can't ignore. Jong-soo refuses, insisting that Jin-Woo's presence is critical for their safety. Torn, Jin-Woo decides to leave behind one of his shadow soldiers to handle things here. He summons Beru, and the appearance of the shadow soldier shocks Jong-soo and his team, as they recognize Beru as the Ant King from Jeju Island. Without much explanation, Jin-Woo orders Beru to protect the humans while giving him the freedom to handle non-humans as he sees fit. Beru understands and prepares to follow his master's orders. Releasing his aura, Beru sends a chill through the hunters around him, who now regret their earlier disrespect toward Jin-Woo. To further strengthen their defenses, Jin-Woo summons more ant shadow soldiers, ensuring that 20 of them will be enough to help them complete the raid. However, Jong-soo and Yerim worry about the possibility of the shadow soldiers losing control. Their concerns offend Jin-Woo. Firmly, he points out that it's better to accept the help than to have none at all. His anger leaves them with no choice but to agree. Jin-Woo feels the need to leave the dungeon immediately, but with his shadow exchange skill still in cooldown, frustration builds inside him. Without wasting another moment, he sprints toward the exit at full speed. Just then, the undead army appears in front of him, blocking his path. Jin-Woo pulls out his dagger, ready to face the obstacle. But strangely, the undead kneel before him, as if offering their respect. Jin-Woo is taken aback, suspecting they might be bowing to him because of his status as the Shadow Monarch. Seizing the opportunity, he leaps over the undead army and quickly summons Kaisel. He activates his Domain of the Monarch skill, boosting Kaisel's stats by 50%, ordering him to fly as fast as possible to Jinna's location. The scene shifts to the school, where the Shadow Warrior High Orcs have defeated the Orc monsters. The students watch in shock and confusion, wondering if the three monsters they saw were protecting them. One of the Shadow Warrior High Orcs stands carefully, guarding Jinna. He then points in a direction, telling Jinna that a new threat is about to appear. Meanwhile, inside the school dungeon, an Orc warlord and the chief of the Red Blade tribe, Grokter, sits on his throne. Soon, one of his subordinates reports that the humans who were once in danger are now being protected by 3 Shadow Warrior High Orcs. Grokter is stunned, unable to believe that the powerful Orc warriors couldn't defeat the High Orcs. Furious, he orders his subordinates to lead the way, ready to slaughter them himself. The scene shifts back to the dungeon, where the Shadow Ant soldiers start moving. This fills the hunters with fear, worried that the summoned creatures might lose control and turn on them. Jong-soo ponders whether they should retreat from the dungeon, but remembers the reporters waiting outside. He starts to think of an excuse he can give them. He considers telling them they're retreating because they're afraid of Jin-Woo's summoned soldiers. Suddenly, Beru appears in front of him, startling Jong-soo and sending a chill of fear through him. Beru doesn't give Jong-soo a chance to retreat, throwing something at him before continuing down the dungeon. It turns out to be the head of a Death Knight monster. The hunters, witnessing this, are astonished and comment on how easily the ants took down such a high-level monster. Jong-soo smiles, realizing the advantages of having ants this strong. He urges his team to continue the raid. However, without him noticing, his team has already advanced ahead, following the ant shadow soldiers. The scene shifts to the school, where a fierce battle is raging between Grokter and 3 shadow soldiers of the High Orc. The roars of the orcs echoed through the air, as if they were cheering for their favorite wrestler. Grokter, proudly displaying the tattoos across his body, acted as though each mark was a glorious testament to the countless battles he had fought, despite the possibility that some of them could have just been from drunken nights. He stared down the shadow warriors, challenging them to prove their worth. Grokter swings his sword with full force. However, one of the shadow warriors manages to block the strike. Surprised, Grokter intensifies his attack and succeeds in slicing one of the warriors in half. However, the split warrior quickly regenerates in seconds. Grokter is left speechless, as if he had just watched a magic trick gone wrong. Suddenly, a sharp pain hits his head, accompanied by a mysterious command urging him to kill a human. Realizing he needs to end the fight quickly, Grokter shifts his gaze to Jinna, who's hiding behind one of the shadow warriors. He soon realizes that the source of the shadow warrior's magic power is the girl. Grokter orders his subordinates to relentlessly attack the shadow warriors. The orcs rush in, surrounding and launching brutal attacks, overwhelming the shadow warriors with sheer numbers. Meanwhile, the students, witnessing the chaos, were losing their minds, panicking like they'd just seen a ghost. Grokter sees his chance, grabs Jinna by the head with his massive hand, preparing to finish her off. Suddenly, he feels an ominous aura approaching. His body trembles with fear. In a hurry, he releases his grip and warns his subordinates to brace for impact. A massive explosion demolishes the school wall, and a figure steps forward calmly, telling Jinna that everything will be okay. It's Jin-Woo, who had just arrived with Kai-Sel, smashing through the wall. Grokter realizes the terrifying presence in front of him and introduces himself as the chieftain of the Red Blade. However, Jin-Woo points at him and sternly orders the monster to shut up and wait. He then asks about Jinna's friends, making sure they were all right. But when he saw his sister's face, he realized she had just been grabbed by that ugly monster, and that only made him angrier. Jin-Woo summoned Igris to protect Jinna, then called forth some shadow knights to escort the students out of the area. As the humans attempted to flee, the monsters prepared to attack. But Jin-Woo immediately stares them down and commands them on the monster's tongue to stay put. With the help of the shadow soldiers, the students were successfully evacuated. Once everyone was safe, Grokter began to wonder if the immortal warriors he'd seen earlier were under Jin-Woo's control and how Jin-Woo could speak their language. But Jin-Woo remained silent, consumed by rage. Seeing no response from him, Grokter ordered his troops to attack. The monsters charged forward. When one of the orcs swung its axe, Jin-Woo swiftly grabbed its arm and slammed the creature to the ground. With cold brutality, he crushes its head under his foot. 2 more monsters rushed at him. Jin-Woo activates his Dominator touch skill, and with a wave of his hand, he easily controls their bodies. With another swift move, Jin-Woo shatters both monsters' bodies instantly. Watching this, the remaining orcs became furious and attacked Jin-Woo all at once. But with incredible speed, Jin-Woo slaughtered them all in a single motion. Grokter couldn't believe how easily his forces were defeated. In a flash, Jin-Woo grabbed Grokter by the head and smashed him hard against the wall. Jin-Woo's fury boiled over as he looked at the bodies of the massacred students. He demanded to know why the monsters were so merciless toward humans. Grokter explained that they were under orders to kill humans. With a sharp glare, Jin-Woo asked if that order included killing him too. Panicking, the ugly orc stammered out a denial, begging for mercy as tears streamed down his face. Annoyed, Jin-Woo sneered and asked if he wasn't considered human. He then coldly declared that the orc's death would be painful. Jin-Woo drew his dagger and viciously hacked the ugly orc to pieces until he died. The scene shifts back to the dungeon, where Shadow Ant soldiers are seen feasting on the corpses of the undead army they had defeated. Yerem, noticing the high value of the monster corpses, tries to snatch one from the jaws of a Shadow Ant soldier. However, her actions disrupt and anger the soldier, leading to an unintentional injury. The ant soldier glares at her as if she'd insulted its mother or tried to steal its food. Beru quickly steps in to calm the situation. With a composed demeanor, he uses healing magic to treat Yerem's wounds. Yerem is stunned, She never expected a summoned creature like Beru to wield healing magic, let alone magic far superior to her own abilities. She couldn't help but feel a bit sheepish, realizing her powers were outclassed by a summon. As they ventured deeper into the dungeon, they arrived at the boss room. The room was guarded by high-level undead soldiers, while arch-liches, the dungeon bosses, floated above them. The appearance of the arch-liches shocked the hunters, as they realized these monsters were far more powerful than the Death Knight they had faced before. Jiangsu anxiously warns his team about the arch-liches, telling them how these monsters once wiped out the Gold Dragon Guild in China, causing a dungeon break that only national-level hunter Lu Jigang could stop. He also points out that the undead soldiers here are no joke, as their strength surpasses A-rank hunters. However, the situation gets worse as the undead soldiers come back to life, cutting off their escape. Panicking, Jiangsu shouts at Yerem to block the entrance. Yerem quickly activates her Holy Wall skill, creating a magical barrier to hold off the advancing undead. In this situation, Jiangsu realized that without Jin-Woo, completing this raid would be nearly impossible. Under immense pressure, Yerem warns Jiangsu that her skill will only last for 5 more minutes. Amid the chaos, Beru calmly stepped forward, closing in on the dungeon boss and his forces. The arch-liches stared at him, puzzled, wondering why the monarch's personal troops were attacking them. They were supposed to be allies. Beru pointed at the arch-liches and said, "We have been chosen by the monarch, and you weren't." Stunned, the arch-liches demanded to hear it straight from the monarch. Suddenly, Beru closed the gap in a flash, and delivered a powerful blow, taunting, "You talk way too much for someone who's about to die." Beru smashed arch-liches to the ground. He yanked out arch-lich's life core and smashed it to bits in no time. With the dungeon boss out of the picture, the undead army around them just collapsed, dead all over again. Beru let out a victorious roar, totally proud of himself. Watching from afar, Jiangsu was seriously impressed. Summoning beasts like that usually drains a summoner dry, but Jin-Woo looked like he hadn't even broken a sweat. Jin-Woo was on a whole other level, way beyond what any major guild could handle. It was almost unfair, like watching someone speedrun a game while everyone else struggled on the tutorial level. Yuntae, totally wowed by Jin-Woo's strength, suggested teaming up with his guild. Jiangsu was skeptical. It sounded too good to be true. Yuntae admitted, though reluctantly, that a hunter as strong as Jin-Woo probably didn't need backup. The guy could clear high-level dungeons with the same effort most people put into microwaving leftovers. But then Jiangsu remembered the Hunter Association's rules about having enough people for raids. Even Jin-Woo had to play by the book. Yuntae thought this was their big break. Their guild could make up the numbers, and with Jin-Woo's power leading the charge, any raid would be a sure win. With renewed enthusiasm, Jiangsu decided to pitch the idea to Jin-Woo. This was an opportunity too good to pass up, even if it felt a bit like convincing a cat to swim. The scene shifts to the school, where hunters have arrived at the site and begun evacuating the victims. The air is thick with the heart-wrenching cries of parents grieving for their lost children, while reports confirm that 213 students have died in this dungeon break incident. Meanwhile, an association vehicle zooms through the traffic. During the ride, Mr. Go's worried about the incident, emphasizing the large number of student casualties. He shows Jin-Woo a graph on his phone that tracks the rising number of gates appearing across Korea in the past 6 months. Similar phenomena are occurring worldwide, with an increasing number of individuals awakening and becoming hunters as more gates emerge, as if the world is trying to create a new balance. In his mind, Jin-Woo finds this odd, realizing that the world is undergoing a massive shift. He then asks Mr. Go what he wants to discuss. Mr. Go hands Jin-Woo a document containing official requests from major countries such as Japan, China, Russia, the United States, and even the Middle East. They all wish to establish contact with him and are eager to recruit him to their respective nations. Mr. Go stresses that the final decision is entirely up to Jin-Woo. However, he also voices his concern that if a hunter of Jin-Woo's caliber were to leave Korea, the country might struggle to adapt to the significant changes happening. A short while later, they arrive at the hospital where Jin-Ah is being treated. As Jin-Woo steps out of the car, Mr. Go reassures him that the association is willing to offer anything to convince him to stay in Korea and asks him to name any request he desires. Jin-Woo leans forward, his eyes serious, stating his desire to enter high-level dungeons alone. Mr. Go falls silent for a moment, pondering Jin-Woo's request. He knows it violates the minimum headcount rule, an association regulation designed to protect hunters from unnecessary risk. However, he realizes that Jin-Woo's desire to establish his own guild is deeply connected to this goal. Jin-Woo confirms this, explaining that he simply wants to work alone. Though it's a tough request, Mr. Go admits that removing the rule isn't entirely impossible. He tells Jin-Woo to leave it to him and promises to take care of it. The scene then shifts to a Jin guild, where Jin-Ho is on the phone with his cousin, Yoo Soo-hyun, a well-known hunter and celebrity in Korea. Jin-Ho invites Soo-hyun to join his guild, assuring her that being part of an unofficial guild would be more beneficial than being tied to her father's guild. Soo-hyun is skeptical of the offer, suspecting that Jin-Ho might have fallen for a scam. However, with a mysterious tone, Jin-Ho insists that she'll be shocked once she finds out who the guildmaster is. He urges her to come and see for herself, piquing Soo-hyun's curiosity. At the guild office, Jin-Woo immediately asks Jin-Ho about the woman with him. Jin-Ho explains that she's his cousin, Yoo Soo-hyun, an A-rank hunter. Soo-hyun is stunned when she sees Jin-Woo, recognizing him as the famous S-rank hunter in Korea. Jin-Ho smirks and nudges her playfully, noting how easily she gets surprised for a celebrity. As they talk, Jin-Woo confirms that Jin-Ho has explained everything. Soo-hyun acknowledges this and agrees to join a Jin guild, even admitting that she prefers this option over joining her father's guild. She then asks if she can take a picture with Jin-Woo and post it on Instagram. In no time, the post goes viral, garnering over 200,000 likes with the caption, "First day of a Jin guild." Hunter Cha, who comes across the post, is visibly shocked. Her body trembles slightly, like a phone on 1% battery with no charger in sight. The scene shifts to the National Assembly building of Korea, where a meeting is underway to discuss Jin-Woo's request. Congressman Jun Wook-nam firmly rejects the request, arguing that it makes no sense for summoned creatures to be counted as raid members, deeming it unworthy. He insists that the Hunter Association must remain fair and impartial. Approving such a request, he argues, would make them appear biased toward Jin-Woo. Nam presses Mr. Go for an explanation of the situation. With a serious expression,
"It's not that the president didn't love you. It's just that his expectations for you were just as big as his love for you." After that, the assistant tells him, "Let's take you to the residence." As they start to leave, Jin-Ho senses something and turns back, but there was no one there. The assistant asks him if everything is all right, and Jin-Ho tells him, "It's nothing," and they start to leave. After they leave, we see Jin-Woo, who is watching him using his ability to go invisible, standing in front of his father. He says, "He is making me all emotional," and opens up a bottle of potion. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Jin-Ho's sister, Jin-hee, had arrived to see her father as she was walking. She noticed Jin-Woo walk past her. Looking at him, she wondered what Jin-Woo was doing in this place. Ignoring that, she started to make her way to her father, and to her shock, as she entered the room, she saw her father had woken up and was looking at her. Seeing this, she became emotional and started to cry. After some time, doctors arrived in the room and explained to her that her father had woken up from an eternal sleep, saying this had never been documented before. I can't even imagine what the media would have to say about this. Outside the hospital, we see Jin-Woo saying, "It's a little early, but happy birthday, Jin-Ho." After walking for a while, he decided to head back to Japan, but as he looked at the shadow exchange, he noticed it still had 1 hour and 54 minutes left. He thought about what he should do for 2 hours, and the thought of Hunter Cha came to his mind. Ignoring that, he thought he should try to find a dungeon to raid. Meanwhile, in the US, Christopher Reed was sleeping in his room, but suddenly he noticed something and woke up. He started to walk down the hallway, thinking everything was too quiet. He picked up a glass of wine and threw it as the glass broke. It made no sound. Seeing this, he thought, "The glass broke, but there is no sound." He wondered what was going on and asked, "Who is doing this?" He thought about Lady Selner's warning and Michael, who had handed him Chairman Go-Gun-He's phone number, telling him to contact him if he needed to. He wondered if Michael had predicted this would happen. Looking down, he saw a man standing in front of him and noticed some people behind him as well. He asked, "Who are you?" The man told him, "You will not be able to save anything if you keep accommodating these human beings," calling him a fragment of brilliant light. Christopher recognized it as monster language and asked what the man was talking about. The man, pointing upwards, told him, "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to someone above who's connected to you." Hearing that, Christopher asked if he was a joke to them and began to transform, saying, "At least one of you is going to die by my hands." The creatures recognized the transformation as a spiritualization, saying, "How can a mere human use this ability?" As Christopher fully transformed, he started to attack the creatures present in the room. Back in Japan, Jin-Woo was in a car, making his way toward the airport, and the people of Japan were there to see him off as he had saved their country from being destroyed by monsters. He said, "Everyone is gathered here, saying they wanted to see the famous hunter who saved them from the monsters at least once." Though not exact, it was estimated the crowd was over 100,000 people strong. After some time, we see Jin-Woo sitting on a plane, saying, "What's the probability that a familiar face will be sitting next to you on a plane strictly by chance?" It was Agent Adam White. Jin-Woo asked him if he was going to call this a coincidence. Adam told him, "It would be nice if you thought it was, but that would be difficult to believe." He added, "We've only met once, but I see you still remember me. It's an honor to see you again." Jin-Woo thought it was Baru who just told him from the shadows that his name was Adam, adding, "You can't get the name wrong this time." Jin-Woo asked, "Weren't negotiations halted?" Adam replied, "I know it's rude to see you like this without contacting you through the proper channels, but I have something to tell you." Hearing that, Jin-Woo asked if the United States was unable to block the S-rank gate. Adam told him the matter had already been resolved. He showed Jin-Woo a video of a house burning down as firefighters were trying to extinguish the fire. They said, "This isn't an ordinary fire. No matter what we do, we are unable to suppress it." Seeing this, Jin-Woo asked, "What is this video?" Adam told him to watch it until the end, that he then explained, it was Christopher Reed who caused this fire. 1,800 firefighters and 14 top-class hunters were mobilized to extinguish the fire he created. Jin-Woo asked, "If there was that much fire, that means there must have been a battle. Was Christopher defeated?" Adam nodded, saying, "Yes. We can hardly believe it either, but he's already been killed." He pulled out a picture from his pocket, saying, "This is a picture of the person the Hunter Bureau considers to be the most likely suspect." Suddenly, Adam was lifted up into the air as Jin-Woo sat there furious. He asked, "Is this supposed to be a joke? I assure you that you won't be walking out of here on your own 2 feet." Hearing this, Adam stopped the agents who were preparing to attack Jin-Woo and explained, "The person in the picture came out of a dungeon. He may not be who we think he is." Jin-Woo asked him to explain. Adam told him, "His magic power is the same as that of monsters, and he attacked our S-class hunter during the interrogation. Remember the explosion at the Hunter Bureau a few months ago? It's the incident that caused a stir around the world." Hearing that, Jin-Woo asked if they thought this happened because of his father and let Adam go. Gasping for air, Adam told Jin-Woo he knocked out our hunters and went into hiding after that. The Hunter Bureau tried to track him in secret, but it's as if he evaporated. No trace of him was found. He added, "I understand how you must feel, but he meets without a doubt all of the requirements needed to make him a suspect." Jin-Woo asked, "Why are you showing me this picture?" Adam told him about the International Guild Conference, saying, "At the Newbern Conference, where representatives of famous guilds from across the world gather, the U.S. Hunters Management Department plans to distribute his wanted posters. This means the investigation will no longer be conducted in secret." He continued, "The Hunter Association has lost a valuable national-level hunter from this incident. They will do everything in their power to catch the culprit. We, the Hunter Association, wish to maintain a good relationship with you until the end." which is why we prepared this meeting, so we could inform you before posting this bounty publicly. It would have been shocking for you to see your father's face on the screen at an event you were invited to. Adam thought. His telekinesis is on a totally different level compared to high-tier magic hunters. Only national-level hunters would be able to use telekinesis to this extent. He realized this person is truly the 6th national-level hunter and thought they had to let the vice director know about this. Fast forward a few days, the list of guilds invited to the conference was released, and the name of the Ajin Guild was among those invited to attend. After some time, we see a press conference being held in Korea regarding the Ajin Guild. Some reporters asked Hunter Choi about his thoughts on the matter. He told the press, "The American Hunters Association has made an obvious decision as someone who has witnessed his skills firsthand during several incidents, including the Jeju Island raid. You could compare the Ajin Guild to any guild in the world, and its strength would be second to none." They asked him, from the perspective of the Hunters Guild, which has represented Korea every year at the Guild Conference, "I can't help but think you aren't happy about this." Choi replied, "Of course, I'm disappointed that I won't be able to travel to the US as I had already made all the necessary preparations for that. But I feel more proud than disappointed, as a hunter has appeared in Korea whom I can place my faith in without hesitation in a time of hopelessness against monsters." He added, "My guild members and I have actually been saved by Hunter Jin-Woo in the past, so I am genuinely proud that Hunter Jin-Woo was selected to represent Korea." While walking toward his car, Choi was stopped by a guild member who informed him that they successfully reserved the gate in Suseodong, which spawned that morning. "It's an A-rank gate, but the readings aren't particularly high," the member said. He asked, "Did the Ajin Guild request a reservation this time?" The man replied, "No, they have been a little too quiet these days." Back at the Hunter Association, Wu was reporting to the chairman about China, requesting information about Hunter Jin-Woo. The chairman asked if they were asking about his personal information. Wu replied, "No, they requested official and public information, such as his raid records and relevant news articles." Hearing that, the chairman wondered why China was suddenly showing interest in Hunter Jin-Woo, as Jin-Woo had clearly stated his disinterest in being scouted by any other country. Wu told him, it wasn't the Chinese government who requested this, but an individual. It was China's 7-star hunter, Liu Jigang, who has taken an interest in Hunter Jin-Woo. The chairman thought, China does not follow the world's standard ranking system. Their 5 stars are the highest possible rank, but just one person, Liu Jigang, is known as a 7-star hunter, an exception to the existing classification system. Wu tells the chairman that Hunter Liu has fought against a giant who was crossing the ocean to China, so he's interested in Hunter Jin-Woo, who took care of all the giants. The chairman thinks for a second and instructs Wu to deny his request, and if a problem arises, send him some superficial information. Back in the United States, Laura informs Thomas that Jin-Woo will be arriving in the country tomorrow. From the back, a man enters the room, asking Thomas if he called him. Thomas tells him, "I have something to tell you urgently." He starts to walk up to him, saying, "I'll get straight to the point," and tells the man, "Do not touch Jin-Woo when he arrives in the US." We see it's Hunter Huang, who is sweating, seeing Thomas so close to his face. Thomas tells him, "I know what happened between Jin-Woo and your brother." Huang tries to protest against his order, but feels his mana and is left stunned. Thomas tells him, "I don't remember giving you permission to speak." He tells Huang to just shut up and listen. Seeing them, Laura thinks there aren't many people who can give such a warning threat to a top rank like that, just as expected from Thomas. However, Huang's obsession with his prey goes toe-to-toe with Thomas. He warns Huang, under any circumstances, do not touch Hunter Jin-Woo, and tells him to go and take a vacation at the guild resort while the conference is going on. After that, he tells Huang to leave, and as he is going, Laura asks Thomas if it is a good idea to let him leave like this. He tells Laura there is no way he has given up yet, and instructs her to keep a close eye on Mr. Huang until Jin-Woo leaves the US. She asks if he will do as we say, and Thomas tells her, "I'm sure he'd rather be a little uncomfortable than be dead." Welcome back to another episode of Solo Leveling. Please like the video and subscribe. In Chapter 142 begins in the USA, where all the major guilds have gathered for the International Guild Conference that we see two men walking towards the building, surrounded by press. It is Leonard Neerman, representative of Germany's Richter Guild, alongside the guild's vice master. Leonard asks about all the reporters and why so many have gathered here this year. The vice master tells him that the Korean hunter everyone's been talking about is supposedly arriving today, so all these reporters have gathered for him. As they look to the side, they see Jin-Woo along with Hunter Jin-Ho and Chief Woo Jinchul. Leonard asks if they should introduce themselves, as they have nothing to lose by becoming acquainted with a strong hunter. As Leonard approaches Jin-Woo, his expression changes, and he is left stunned. The vice master asks if everything is okay. Leonard asks, "Can't you see what I'm seeing?" He thinks Jin-Woo doesn't summon creatures from another dimension. He brings all of them around with him. He comments, "With those numbers, I'd believe it if we were told that he is here to wage war against the US." Jin-Woo notices Leonard staring and tells Jin-Ho, "There's some foreigner who's been staring at me for a while." Jin-Ho replies, "With all the airtime you got on the news, I'm sure you have quite a few fans. He probably wants an autograph." Jin-Ho then turns to Woo and asks why he's here at this meeting with them. With a depressed look, Woo replies that he was assigned the task of protecting Hunter Jin-Woo. Jin-Ho, teasing, gets closer and asks, "What was that?" Stuttering, Woo replies, "Protecting Hunter Jin-Woo." As they joke around, Jin-Woo notices that someone seems to be there to greet them. It turns out to be Adam White, who says, "We've been waiting for you." Jin-Woo asks Adam, "Aren't you supposed to be in Asia, since you're in charge of the Bureau's branch there?" Adam replies, "That's true, but now I'm also in charge of matters regarding you, Hunter Jin-Woo." Adam instructs them that instead of Hunter Jin-Woo, all of the remaining members from Korea will be escorted to their rooms. Jin-Woo asks Jin-Ho to go to his room with Chief Woo to the hotel. After they leave, Adam asks Jin-Woo to follow him. Jin-Woo, with a serious look, asks, "Is this about my father?" Adam, sweating, tells him, "It isn't anything that'll harm you. The U.S. Hunters Bureau regards you very highly." As they leave, Jin-Woo asks, "Can't you tell me what it's about?" Adam replies, "Some matters are classified as top secret." In the car, Jin-Woo asks where Adam is taking him. Adam explains, "We're going to the Hunters Bureau headquarters. We're under serious pressure at the moment after the death of national rank hunter Christopher Reed, one of the pillars of the United States combat potential. We're desperate to fill the void in our combat strength. Although things remain calm on the surface, Christopher's death has yet to be revealed. Soon, we will invest all our resources into looking for a hunter who can replace him." Jin-Woo asks, "Am I one of the candidates?" Adam nods and says yes. Adam then shows Jin-Woo some pictures of the skeleton of the dragon Kamish and the runestone found in its body after the beast was defeated. He explains that the value of a runestone is proportional to the power of the monster from which it was extracted. He tells Jin-Woo about mankind's greatest calamity, a raid that everyone throughout history wanted to forget, the dragon Kamish. A runestone was extracted from the body of Kamish, and they're looking for a new owner of this runestone. Adam asks, "What do you think of our latest proposition?" Jin-Woo, seeing the pictures, asks Adam to flip back through them, saying, "I want to see the previous photo." Adam asks, "Are you talking about Kamish's corpse?" Jin-Woo asks, "Has the US been keeping the monster's corpse intact?" Adam replies, "Yes." Jin-Woo then asks for the location of the facility storing the skeleton and tells Adam to take him there first. Adam, surprised, asks for the reason. Jin-Woo replies, "I've given the Hunters Bureau my time without any complaints. I'm sure this isn't too much to ask." Adam informs Jin-Woo that he does not know the exact location of the facility himself, but says, "If it's a request from you, I don't think it'd be too hard to gain permission from the authorities." He adds, "I'll have to make a report first, so would you mind waiting for just a moment?" Jin-Woo responds, "If we're going to wait, let's wait together," and tells Adam he's coming with him. Fast forward to director David Brennan, who asks Adam, "Is Jin-Woo really in this building right now?" David asks if Jin-Woo is interested in their offer of the runestone. Adam replies, "No, the runestone was almost never brought up the entire day." David asks, "Is he really only interested in seeing the corpse of the monster and not the runestone?" After thinking, he asks Michael, the deputy director, for his thoughts. Michael says, "The value of a skill is truly unimaginable. Top hunters do not hold back in spending money on runestones they need, which means it's possible that seeing the corpse is more valuable to him than gaining a skill." David asks, "Does his ability only work on monsters that he's killed himself?" A frightening thought hits Michael. He tells David, "What if he can even turn creatures into his shadow soldiers that were not killed by him?" They realize that Jin-Woo plans on turning Kamish into his summon. David springs up, saying, "If that's really the case, then I can't allow it. No individual should be allowed to be that strong." Michael warns him that if they refuse his request, it may become difficult to maintain their relationship with Jin-Woo. After thinking for a bit, David decides to take Jin-Woo to the facility himself, as this could be a good opportunity to check out his ability. As they're in the elevator going down towards the facility, David tells Jin-Woo, "I'd like to sit down and talk things through a little more. But is this what you prefer?" As they arrive at the location, Jin-Woo notices there's magic energy mixed into the air. For magic energy to still remain after 8 years, I wonder how powerful it'll be when turned into a shadow soldier. Standing in front of the creature, David tells Jin-Woo, "We have preserved the dragon just as it was when it was taken down by the 5 national-level hunters after killing hundreds of elite hunters. The energy used by the Hunters Association headquarters is also supplied by Kamish's mana crystal." David asks if Jin-Woo is satisfied now. Jin-Woo asks everyone to stand back and starts to approach the creature. Seeing him, David tells the others not to stop him, saying, "Let's all just watch and see what happens." Jin-Woo uses shadow extraction, but a notification shows up telling him the shadow extraction has failed. Seeing this, Jin-Woo tries a second time. The place starts to fill up with a dark shadow. A dragon emerges from the skeleton of the beast, and the room starts to break down from the magic energy being released by the shadow. As the beast fully emerges, it asks Jin-Woo, "Are you the one who summoned me? King of the Dead, Shadow Monarch?" All the humans standing behind Jin-Woo start to panic, seeing Kamish come back to life. Kamish, seeing them, starts to lose control, saying, "Kill humans. I will kill them all," and begins to break the glass that was holding it. Seeing the power of the beast, David thinks, "Reinforced glass with the top ranker's mana imbued, and this creature is shattering it like it's nothing." Kamish gets out of the cage and starts to charge up an attack. The humans panic, and David tells the men, "It's Kamish's breath. Where could we possibly escape to?" But before the creature can do more damage to the facility, Jin-Woo orders it to stop, telling the dragon, "The mana crystal embedded in your head has long since been removed. There is no need for you to follow the commands of the rulers anymore." Seeing this, the men realize that Jin-Woo was speaking the language of the monsters. Kamish tells Jin-Woo, "So this is how it feels to become a subject of the Shadow Monarch," and starts to come out of the cage, saying, "As a humble servant who once served the King of Dragons, I greet you, my new king." Jin-Woo asks, "Did you really serve the King of Dragons?" Kamish replies, "Yes, I served the King of Mad Dragons, the Monarch of Destruction." Seeing the creature, Jin-Woo thinks, "What immense rage. To think that a shadow soldier could possess such a strong, independent ego. It surpasses that of any monster I've encountered so far. There's no doubt he was an incredible being." Meanwhile, the people standing behind them are surprised to see Kamish wagging its tail in front of Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo thinks, "There's the King of the Dead, the Shadow Monarch, the King of Giants, the Monarch of the Beginning, and I guess it is another one of the 9 monarchs that the system showed me." As he was thinking, he noticed that Kamish was disintegrating in the air. Kamish told him, "It appears that our meeting came about too late, as too much time had passed since I was killed." Seeing this, Jin-Woo started to panic and called for the system, but it was no use. As he stood in front of the beast, Kamish, in his final moments, told Jin-Woo, "I envy your soldiers who can serve you for all eternity," and warned him by saying, "For humans have borrowed the strength of the rulers. Be wary of them, my lord." The skeleton of the creature then fell to the floor as a notification opened up, saying shadow extraction has failed. After that, Jin-Woo told Mr. White to tell the director, "I am deeply sorry, and I will cover the expenses for the damages." As he started to leave, the men were horrified when they heard a loud thud from behind. Jin-Woo, in his frustration, had punched the door, destroying it in the process. Fast forward, we see Woo asking Jin-Woo where he was, as he hadn't been able to contact him. Jin-Woo tells him, "I was in a place where no calls could get through temporarily." Woo asks if he met with Jin-Ho, and Jin-Woo asks what he's talking about. Woo tells him, "He left as soon as he received your message, telling him to meet you at the Hunter Bureau's headquarters." Jin-Woo tells him he never asked him to do that, saying, "I just came from that place." He then asks Adam White if he knows anything about this. Adam replies, saying his name is not on the visitor log in the Hunter Bureau. Hearing that, Woo tells them, "There is no way. A hunter from the Scavenger Guild came to personally pick him up 2 hours ago." Hearing that, Agent White starts to make a call to the Scavenger Guild, saying, "The Scavenger Guild does have a close relationship with the Hunter Bureau, but they do not have the authority to do our jobs in our stead. It'll be faster to contact them and ask directly." Jin-Woo thinks, "Why do I have a bad feeling about this?" Laura from the Scavenger Guild picks up the call, and Agent White asks her about the person who came to pick up the Vice Master of a Jin Guild. She realizes it was Huang behind this. She asks if Hunter Jin-Woo is aware of the situation. White tells her he does not know yet, but his party inquired about him while Hunter Jin-Woo was at the Hunter Bureau. She tells him they will find Jin-Ho as quickly as possible. After the call, White tells Jin-Woo the Scavenger Guild says they're looking into it and will be in touch soon. But as he looks back, Jin-Woo is nowhere to be seen. We see Jin-Woo making his way around the city, looking for Jin-Ho, thinking, "I was careless. I didn't place any shadow around Jin-Ho after using Shadow Exchange to save President Yu Myung-han's life in the hospital." Remembering the incident with his sister, he thinks, what if something similar happens again? He stops to summon all of his shadows, instructing them to find Jin-Ho. They all start to spread around the city, searching for him, though we see some men lying on the floor, beaten up by someone. It was Thomas, interrogating the men to find Huang's location. He tells his men he has really done it now, and instructs them to find him before Jin-Woo does. Meanwhile, Huang was in an abandoned building, looking at Jin-Ho, who was beaten up and bleeding from his mouth. Back in the city, Jin-Woo stands on top of a building, listening to the conversations of people using his shadow soldiers to find Jin-Ho's location. He wonders if they've left the city and thinks Jin-Ho is a combat-type D-rank hunter. Normal people wouldn't be able to take him, even in significant numbers. If a car supposedly headed for the Hunter Bureau headquarters suddenly tried to leave the city, Jin-Ho would surely have noticed something was wrong and resisted. The only clue the culprit left behind is that they are with the Scavenger Guild. He thinks about Huang Dong-suk's younger brother, Huang Dong-su, who must have been waiting for them to step foot in America to find out the truth about his brother's death. Since Jin-Ho and Jin-Woo were the sole survivors of the dungeon where Huang's brother died, Huang must be certain that they killed his brother. With rage in his eyes, Jin-Woo says, if anything happens to Jin-Ho, back in the Scavenger Guild headquarters, someone informs Thomas that they haven't been able to track down Huang so far. Hearing that, Thomas wonders if Huang isn't afraid of death, as he is an S-rank hunter and clearly knows the difference in strength between himself and Jin-Woo. Doing something so foolish despite knowing that must mean Huang expects Thomas to step in on his behalf. Thomas calls Laura, thinking, perhaps I've been too kind to my hunters. He asks her how the situation is on her end. She informs him, with the Hunter Bureau's cooperation, we've analyzed Mr. Huang's movement patterns over the past month. There were a total of 3 instances where he strayed from his usual path of activity. He instructs her to send all of their members there, saying he will join them too. He asks her, how did you manage to convince the Hunter Bureau She explains, I told them that if we don't find Huang soon, you and Jin-Woo may collide. Meanwhile, the agents of the Hunter Bureau are panicking after discovering that all the Scavenger Guild members are on the move. White informs Michael they've canceled all scheduled raids, and all of their hunters are mobilizing. Michael thinks if all members of the Scavenger Guild are on the move, that means Thomas is behind this. This might be bigger than we think. The scene shifts to an abandoned factory where Huang, along with some other men, is interrogating Jin-Ho. One of the men asks Huang if he is sure this is okay. Huang tells the men, I'm not planning on doing anything to him. There's just one thing I want to know. He explains, Thomas warned me not to touch Jin-Woo, but I never planned on messing with him. There was one more person who could provide me with answers, so there's just one thing I wanted to hear, that Hunter Jin-Woo killed my brother. He punches Jin-Ho, asking him to wake up. Another man comments, he's pretty durable. I guess he's a tank after all. Any normal human would be dead by now. Huang slams Jin-Ho's head into the wall, saying, your courage is commendable, but your stubbornness won't lead to forgiveness. He tells him, I don't want to kill you. The guy behind me is a decent healer, and he's going to save you whenever you're on the brink of death. Which means, until you tell me what I want to know, you'll be tortured here forever. He continues, this factory has been abandoned for over 5 years. There's nobody here to save you, no matter how much you scream. He then asks, want to talk now? Jin-Ho tries to say something, and Huang asks, what are you saying? He sees Jin-Ho flipping him off. Furious, he slams Jin-Ho into a pillar. A man in the back tells Huang to be careful, or he might kill Jin-Ho. Hearing that, Huang says, let's continue the interrogation. The man asks him, haven't you found out enough? Huang replies, I'm just getting started. Jin-Ho sees a vision of Huang's brother in front of him. Before he can do anything, Huang notices something. As he looks toward the location, he sees a shadow soldier standing there. He takes off his jacket, asking, is there a dungeon break nearby? Where did that orc come from? He charges toward the orc, saying, I don't have time to mess around. Back in Korea, Jinwoo's mother and sister are watching television, and her mother is wondering if Jin-Woo was okay. Baru, from the back, after hearing that, thinks if there's anything Jin-Woo couldn't withstand, nobody on Earth would be safe from it. They watch the news and see Jin-Woo has arrived in the US. As they watch, all of a sudden Baru feels something. He thinks this feeling, I felt it once before. The king is enraged. Back in the US, we see cars rushing through the streets. It's the Scavenger Guild. Thomas is inside one of the cars. He orders the driver to stop, thinking it's already begun. He kicks the door off the car and jumps out, ordering his men to follow him as fast as they can, saying, I'll go on ahead. After he leaves, his men remark, we're going to be flooded with damages compensation invoices again tomorrow. Back in the factory, we see Huang being punched in the stomach, and Jin-Ho, seeing this, smirks, knowing he's been saved. The force of the punch is so high that it launches an S-rank hunter like Huang flying into the distance. It's Jin-Woo, who has managed to track them down to save Jin-Ho. After knocking Huang out of the building, he approaches Jin-Ho and gives him the potion to drink. But a notification opens up, saying, you cannot use a healing potion to recover health points if the health points drop below 10%. Seeing this, he turns his attention towards the remaining 2 men standing behind him. He asks if any one of them is a healer and, with rage in his eyes, tells them to heal Jin-Ho. The healer, with a shaky voice, tells him, I don't understand Korean. By that time, Huang had recovered and was entering the building, saying he is asking you to heal the guy. Standing there, Huang asks, is this the first time we've met in person, Hunter Jin-Woo? But Jin-Woo, completely ignoring him, tells the man, I'll say it for the last time, heal him. The man replies, you should probably convince my boss first. And before he can finish the sentence, Jin-Woo grabs him by his face and slams him into a metal pillar that he turns towards the second man, asking if he's also a healer. The man, scared, tells Huang he didn't say this job was related to Hunter Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo tells the man, I asked if you can use healing magic. The man tells him no, and Jin-Woo slams him into the ground. Seeing Jin-Woo's power, Huang starts to approach him, saying, "As I thought, it's you, the person who killed my brother." Jin-Woo hears Jin-Ho's voice telling him to be careful, and Jin-Woo asks him not to talk in his current condition. Huang tells Jin-Woo to answer his question, if he is the one who killed his brother and his teammates. As they stand in front of each other, Jin-Woo tells him, "Go ask your brother yourself." Hearing that, Huang starts to attack Jin-Woo and throws a punch at him. But Jin-Woo was too fast. He dodges and strikes back with such force that it launches Huang even further outside the building. Before he can recover, he sees Jin-Woo, who is already sitting next to him. He tries to attack, but gets pinned to the ground instead. After that, a furious Jin-Woo starts to smash his head into the ground continuously. As he was doing that, he heard Thomas, who had also arrived at the location, telling Jin-Woo to stop. Thomas tells Huang, "I told you over and over not to touch him," and asks Jin-Woo if Huang is still alive. Jin-Woo tells him, "I'm not done with him yet." Hearing that, Thomas says to Jin-Woo, "If you can understand this much, it'll make communicating easier." He tells Jin-Woo to let him go, and if he does that, he will let what happened here slide. Hearing that, Jin-Woo turns towards him, asking, "What if I refuse?" Thomas, furious, tells him, "It won't be a request anymore." Hearing that, Jin-Woo throws Huang into the air, saying, "Fine by me." As Huang is in the air, he thinks, "Thomas, you do not have a choice but to interfere in this matter. Hurry up and kill him in my stead." As Jin-Woo stands in front of Thomas, Thomas tells him, "Maybe you do not know who I am." Jin-Woo tells him, "It doesn't matter who you are." Hearing that, Thomas thinks he knows who I am, and yet he's doing such a thing. We see Thomas's past. He grew up in a poor immigrant family and had many enemies. Thomas had one talent that left no choice for the people but to call him the best. It was his ability to cause overwhelming violence. Through countless fights, he began to prove his gifted, innate ability. Since then, he had seen how his power could change those who showed animosity towards him. Strength, authority, wealth, and violence. He used many existing powers of the world to reign over like a king. And when a new form of power emerged in this world, he took the opportunity to reign over as a true king. He destroyed those who got in his way and kneeled those who looked down on him. He regarded violence as true justice. And from those experiences, he knew exactly how to deal with those who refused to obey him. Back in the present, we see that the Scavenger Guild's hunters had also arrived at the location. As they started to enter the place, they heard a loud explosion, and something went flying by them, destroying everything in its path. As the dust settled, they saw it was Thomas, who had been thrown back by Jin-Woo. Unable to believe what they just witnessed, they asked him if he was all right. Thomas signaled them all to stop and, with anger in his eyes, started to walk back toward Jin-Woo. Seeing him like this, all the members started to panic, saying, "Don't just stand there." They started to follow him. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo was instructing Igris and Kaisel to take Jin-Ho to the nearest hospital and to use any means to make sure he gets treated. After they both left, taking Jin-Ho to a safe distance from the place, Jin-Woo turned his attention towards Thomas and his guild members. Summoning all of his soldiers, he prepared to take on the whole guild. Seeing this, Thomas got excited, saying, "This is great. There is finally something of a worthy opponent." While thinking, "I could care less about the Huangdong Su matter anymore. There is only one way to redeem my damaged pride, to kill that bastard." But he tells Jin-Woo, "It's not too late to admit your mistake and back off. I'll at least spare your life if you do, so now, and apologize." But instead of answering, Jin-Woo flips him off. Seeing this, Thomas gets even more furious and starts to transform, saying, "You'll regret not having taken this last chance." As both sides were ready to fight, Jin-Woo gave the signal to his soldiers to advance, and all of them started to charge toward the hunters in front of them. Seeing them coming, Thomas also told his men, "They are coming," and all of them started to charge toward the shadows. Taking a defensive position, All the tanks, using their abilities, created a strong, magical defensive wall in front of them, preventing the soldiers from breaching the line. But their magic was not strong enough to stop the soldiers, and they managed to break the wall. As they did that, all of the soldiers were thrown back, as Thomas had single-handedly taken out dozens of the soldiers. As he looked up, he saw Tusk, who, using his hymn of defense, was blocking his path to go any further. Seeing this, Thomas jumped towards Tusk, going through the shield and his face with no effort. But as he did that, he thought about his guild members, saying, "Those guys don't stand a chance against these monsters," and jumped inside the building where Jin-Woo was. As he looked towards his members, he saw that most of them had already been defeated by the Shadow Army. Off to the side, he saw Jin-Woo, who was also taking out the hunters. Seeing this, he leaped towards him, but before he could reach Jin-Woo, iron got in his path, stopping him from advancing. Thomas punched him, asking him to move, and the force was so high that it took out a powerful soldier like iron in one hit. But as he looked towards Jin-Woo, he was already gone. He wondered where Jin-Woo went and noticed him right beside him. Before he could react, Jin-Woo struck him with his dagger, but was stunned to see it had no effect on Thomas. Seeing the opportunity, Thomas punched him, launching him into the air, while saying, "You look down on a national-level hunter." As Jin-Woo was still in the air, Thomas used his ability, psychokinesis, to pull him back towards himself and told Jin-Woo, "Feel the difference in our strength and despair." Jin-Woo, while being pulled, used Dominator's touch and held Thomas in place. As Thomas was unable to move, he thought, "He's planning on crushing me like this. It's as if he has me fixed in place." Even as he was getting pulled in towards Thomas, Jin-Woo chose to attack. Before Thomas could break free, Jin-Woo landed a solid blow on him with such force that blood started to come out of his mouth, and he was sent flying a couple of feet, but managed to stop himself, thinking, "I'm bleeding." Not giving him any time to recover, Jin-Woo started to attack him, saying, "What did you say just now? Feel the difference in our strength and despair." He threw a barrage of attacks on Thomas, who was completely defenseless and was taking the beating. But Thomas snapped, saying, "I'll stop underestimating you now," and used the ability reinforcement, starting to transform. Meanwhile, the Hunter Association was making their way toward the factory, and we see Agent White in the car. Someone asked him what was going on, and he told the man, "There's no time to explain everything in detail." The man wondered what was going on, saying, "You might not be able to tell as a normal civilian, but if we go any further than this, we'll be risking our lives." Back in the factory, Thomas had completely transformed. Seeing him, Jin-Woo was thinking about what Kamish told him about 4 humans who borrowed the ruler's strength. Perhaps they are among the 5 who survived the Kamish raid, and they are the 4 national-level hunters. As Thomas was approaching Jin-Woo, he started to charge toward Thomas but stopped in his path as he saw Thomas preparing to attack. As he struck the ground beneath his feet, it shattered under the force of the attack, but Jin-Woo managed to jump back just in time. Seeing this, Thomas used another one of his skills, and all of the guild members started to panic, saying, "Get away from him." He had created a black hole that was sucking everything in it, including the shadow soldiers. Seeing the power, Jin-Woo thought, "What incredible strength. It's like a black hole. I would have gotten sucked in if it weren't for ruler's authority." As he was thinking, he noticed something, and a large explosion destroyed half of the building. But Jin-Woo managed to survive the explosion, and as he looked below, he saw Thomas telling him, "I won't miss this time." While all the remaining hunters were taking the injured and evacuating the area, Thomas jumped toward Jin-Woo with superhuman speed. As he got close, Jin-Woo simply stepped on his face and jumped up, kicking him back to the ground. Thomas used his ability to pull Jin-Woo toward himself, and Jin-Woo used Ruler Touch to pull Thomas toward himself. Seeing this, Thomas thought, "If he is planning on facing me head-on," and prepared to strike, saying, "I'll take you on gladly." Both of their fists collided, creating shockwaves. But to his shock, Jin-Woo managed to break the armor that was covering his body and gave him a disappointing look. Thomas was knocked back into the ground. He got back up from the rubble, screaming and furious. and threw a punch at Jin-Woo, but Jin-Woo was too fast. He managed to dodge it and delivered a knee to Thomas's face, shattering the armor. By that time, the agents from the Hunter Association had also arrived at the location and were stunned to see the amount of damage that was caused by those two fighting. The man told White to stay back, as it was dangerous, and pointed to something being thrown away in front of them. White asked the men what that was, and the man told him that it was Thomas Andre. They saw Thomas on the floor as Jin-Woo was beating him up. He thought, how can a mage-type hunter produce such power and speed? Gathering his strength, he said, I can't lose like this, and tried to attack, but Jin-Woo was too fast. He managed to block the attack and ripped off the armor from Thomas's face. Furious, Thomas got back up, saying, I am Thomas Andre. You think this is enough to take me down? But from behind, Jin-Woo attacked him, saying, I told you, didn't I? It doesn't matter who you are. He started to beat him up again. Agent White asked Jin-Woo to stop, but he wasn't listening and continued to strike Thomas, breaking his armor and bones in the process. Finally, Thomas accepted defeat, saying, it's over. I lost. Jin-Woo stopped, seeing his condition. White thought, to reduce the great Thomas Andre to such a state. How many hunters in the world could do such a thing? He wondered if there were any who could do so in the first place. Once this news got out, it would shake the world completely that he ordered the hunters present at the location to heal Thomas quickly. The hunter told him, every bone in his body has been broken. The blood loss is severe too. I won't be enough alone. It'll be better if everyone treats him together. They saw that no one had died in this fight, and White thought, I guess this is as well as it could have gone. One of the men informed him of something, and as they arrived at the spot, they saw the lifeless body of Hunter Huang on the floor, and Jin-Woo was also gone. Back in Korea, Jin-Woo was sitting on top of a building as he had used Shadow Exchange to switch locations with Baru. Another entity was also present near him. He asked the thing, it's been a while since you've been in Korea, right? We saw Baru, who was healing Jin-Ho in the hospital. Back in the US, the thing asked Jin-Woo to give him a name, and we saw it was Hunter Huang, who was kneeling before Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo told him, how is greed? As you died being greedy. After that, he ordered him to put his head back on the ground. The next day, Jin-Woo was making his way toward the International Guild Conference. He asked Michael why there were so many reporters, and Michael told Jin-Woo probably because the reporters had already caught wind of his fight, that as he entered the building, he thought, I don't want to think about Huang anymore. I came to America just for one reason. As soon as my questions are answered, I'll have no business here anymore. And as he entered the room, everyone present inside turned their attention toward Jin-Woo, and the chapter ends. Hope you like it. Subscribe for the next part. Welcome back to another episode of Solo Leveling. Please like the video and subscribe. In the previous episode, Jin-Woo fought against a national level hunter, Thomas Andre, and the whole scavenger guild. He managed to beat them all, saving Jin-Ho in the process. Chapter 148 begins with Jin-Woo entering the room where all the major guilds of the world are gathered. As he makes his way through the people in the room, they all talk about how he managed to beat down Thomas until he almost died. They also mention that Jin-Woo played a significant role in the Tokyo Gate. After some time, the presentation begins and a scientist approaches the stage. He introduces himself as Dr. Belzer. He begins by saying, I'm sure you are all aware of the rise in the number of gates appearing around the world, but not many of you may know that unusual activity has been detected above the skies. He explains that it has been widely reported that the magical energy concentration absorbed into the atmosphere is becoming increasingly greater, but he wants to refer to this magical energy differently. He opens up a map on the screen behind him, referring to the activity as Magisphere. He tells the people that this Magisphere is currently gathered above the skies of several countries. They have observed this phenomenon in a total of 9 places so far, and out of all those places, the Magisphere is most concentrated in Seoul, South Korea. Hearing that, everyone starts to look toward Jin-Woo, suspecting that he might be behind this. However, Dr. Belzer assures everyone that there is no need to look at Mr. Jin-Woo as if he is hurting the Magisphere above the sky. If he were, he'd already be past the realm of hunters. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo wonders if these 9 places are related to the number of sovereigns. The doctor continues, saying, "We do not know its cause, and there's nothing we can do to deal with it at the moment. However, just because it is not possible to deal with it doesn't mean there isn't a need to. The world may be faced with a great change once again." After the presentation, director David Brennan approaches the stage, asking the doctor if the presentation has ended. He tells the doctor, "I'll take it from here." He stands in front of everyone, saying, "I have something urgent to announce to the hunters gathered here today." He begins by saying, "It is with a heavy heart that I deliver this news. Around 2 weeks ago, Hunter Christopher Reed was assassinated by a group of unidentified assailants." After hearing that, everyone is in disbelief. How could someone as powerful as Christopher Reed be assassinated? Who could be powerful enough to do so? The crowd begins to talk, with some speculating if it was the guy who fought Thomas yesterday. Jin-Woo shows no reaction to their gossip. Director David continues by saying, "The news of Christopher Reed's death will be officially released tomorrow. We suspect a man we are referring to as Suspect S is the perpetrator." Jin-Woo then sees his father's picture appear on the screen. The hunters comment on the man's appearance, noting that he resembles someone in the room. One man jokes, "All Asians look similar to us anyway, but no matter how I look at it, that man resembles Hunter Jin-Woo." They sense Jin-Woo's mana as he is furious after seeing his father's picture on the screen. Jin-Woo thinks, "Dungeons are the territory of the rulers. Why did they send a monster in the form of my father? Does this have something to do with what Kamish said?" Director David explains that the man found in a gate in the US was determined to be a monster capable of speaking the human language. They had requested the aid of S-rank Hunter Huang, who spoke Korean, to lead the interrogation, but the suspect attacked Huang in the middle of the interrogation and destroyed the Hunters Association headquarters in a sea of flames. The culprit was powerful enough to defeat Hunter Huang, a key member of the Scavenger Guild, so they concluded that this strong, humanoid monster may have also targeted Hunter Christopher Reed. As Jin-Woo looks at the pictures, he notices him speaking to Huang, warning him not to set foot in Korea. Greed confirmed this, and Jin-Woo thinks, "There's no doubt about it. That man is my father." Director David tells everyone that they plan to request the aid of all guilds around the world to apprehend Suspect S, and ask them to contact the authorities immediately upon discovering him. One person asked the director if there is any proof that Suspect S is not human. The director explains that his magic emission matches that of a monster. Another person asks if Suspect S claimed to be a human who went missing in a dungeon, and if the hunter he described really existed. The director confirms this, saying, yes, he did. They then ask why the hunter's identity is not being revealed. The director replies that the hunter is connected to one of the people present in the room, so they've decided not to disclose that information. As the director is about to leave, another hand rises. It's China's 7-star hunter, Liu Zhiging, who says, wouldn't it be more helpful to reveal his identity in pursuit of his arrest? He directly asks, what's the monster's relation to Hunter Jin-Woo? Hearing this, the director has no choice but to reveal the truth. He tells them, during the questioning, Suspect S revealed himself to be Hunter Jin-Woo's father. Liu then turns to Jin-Woo and asks, if Suspect S turns out to be your missing father and other hunters attempt to hunt him down, what will you do? Jin-Woo replies, it's only right that hunters hunt down monsters. So if he is indeed a monster, I will take care of him myself. But if he is not a monster and truly my father, I will hunt down the hunters. I will protect my family, even if that means making an enemy of every single hunter in the world. Sometime later, we see Woo outside with Jin-Woo. He asks Jin-Woo, did you mean what you said back there? Jin-Woo answers, yes. Woo tells him to say such a thing in front of 500 of the strongest hunters from over 120 different countries. There is probably only one other hunter in the world who would dare say something like that. Jin-Woo asks who the other person is, and Woo replies, he's in the hospital right now. Woo then mentions a feast that the Hunters Association has organized and invites Jin-Woo to dine with the other hunters. Jin-Woo, however, is soon approached by Lim and some other people from his country. Lim says something to Jin-Woo, but Jin-Woo doesn't understand and asks Woo to translate. Woo tells Jin-Woo that Lim said he caught a giant monster that Jin-Woo let slip away on the coast of China. Lim goes on to say that the battle was more difficult than expected, especially since it took place on the water. He has been waiting to meet Jin-Woo ever since, curious about the kind of hunter who can take down such strong monsters with ease that he reaches out to Jin-Woo, saying he's happy Jin-Woo put Hunter Thomas in his place and that he believes Thomas was in the wrong. Seeing this, Jin-Woo thinks, "My first impression of him was that he's just a grumpy guy. Turns out he's a rather interesting person." As Lim leaves, Woo tells Jin-Woo he said he's hoping that Suspect S isn't a member of your family. Woo reassures Jin-Woo that Lim had no ill intent, and Jin-Woo tells him it's alright. After that, Chief David comes to meet Jin-Woo and asks if he has some time to spare. Fast forward, we see Jin-Woo sitting with Miss Sellner. She greets him, saying, "It's been a while, Hunter Sung Jin-Woo." While Jin-Woo wonders, "Is the upgrader here? What does she want from me?" He tells her, "I never thought you'd come to see me again." She tells him, "I've been having the same dream every night recently of top-rank hunters being hunted down by someone." A few days later, these dreams become reality. He asks, "Do you mean Christopher Reed?" She tells him, "We warned Mr. Reed, but he wouldn't listen, and you know how that turned out." She continues, saying, "Powerful hunters who have been supporting our world will continue to die, and those hunting these hunters will not stop." Jin-Woo asks her, "Are you here to warn me as well?" Miss Sellner tells Jin-Woo, "No, but I'm here to ask you to protect the hunters. I've been trying to remember the faces of those who were hunted in my dreams, but it was no use. So I've decided to try something else, to confirm their identities with my ability within the dreams. But once I came into contact with the endless power that lies within them, I was forced to wake up from my sleep." Trembling, she tells Jin-Woo, "I still remember vividly the voice I heard when we locked eyes." Jin-Woo asks, "What did it say?" Miss Sellner tells him, "It told me to go back and prepare for war." Hearing that, Jin-Woo thinks it's the battle between rulers and sovereigns that the King of Giants spoke of. He wonders which side are the ones who are killing the hunters. He asks Miss Sellner, "What does this have to do with you asking me to protect the hunters?" She tells him, "I detected a similar power within you." She continues, "I detected a similar power within you." He thinks she probably saw the power of the Shadow Sovereign within me that day. Director David tells Jin-Woo they are in existence beyond hunters, and we request the help of your immense power to stop them. We weren't completely convinced when we were told you we're the only one who could protect them, but we changed our minds when we saw the battle between you and Hunter Andre yesterday." He tells Jin-Woo that they are willing to offer anything he wants, even the greatest treasure that Kamish left behind, the runestone. He continues, saying, "There are hunters in this world who have received powerful blessings, and they have supported the world with these powers. If they disappear, this world will not be able to last." Hearing that, Jin-Woo apologizes, saying, "I can't do what you ask of me." Director David is surprised and asks, "Is this because you still have a personal grudge against Hunter Thomas?" Jin-Woo tells him, "That is not the reason. It's that I still do not know who I need to be fighting against yet." After the talk, he stands up and starts to leave. As he was going, Agent White thought about what he said in the conference room. "I'll protect my family, even if that means I'll make an enemy of every single hunter in the world." But as he was walking, Jin-Woo stops, turning towards Agent White, and asks him, "Could you give me the list of hunters you want me to protect? I'd appreciate it if you could provide an opportunity for me to meet those hunters as well." Hearing that, with a smile on his face, White tells him, "Of course." Fast forward, it's the last day of the International Guild Conference, the Night of the Hunters. We see Jin-Woo along with Jin-Ho, who has completely recovered. Jin-Woo asks him how he is feeling, and Jin-Ho tells him, "Good as new." As they were talking, some people were commenting about Jin-Woo, saying, "He's right in front of us, and yet I can't feel his presence at all. He's on a different level." Turning their attention towards Jin-Ho, they say, That's the person who fought Thomas Andre to save him. A man approaches Jin-Woo, introducing himself as the CEO of a global corporation specializing in dealing with monster remains. He tells him that he wants to purchase all the giant monsters that Jin-Woo hunted in Japan and asks if he has a moment to spare. Jin-Woo tells him, "I'm mainly in charge of the raids, and my vice chairman here is in charge of all business-related matters." After that, he leaves Jin-Ho with the CEO, thinking he's really a proper vice chairman now. As he was thinking this, Agent White arrives with a list of hunters that need protection, just like Jin-Woo requested that he tells Jin-Woo, "We have ranked the hunters based on their contributions and activity." Jin-Woo asks White, "Where do I rank on this list?" White tells him, if they take into account the giants you took out, probably third or fourth. Looking at the list, Jin-Woo thinks this is such a drag. I should just put a shadow soldier on each of them instead of memorizing all their names. Thinking this is a really optimal environment to place shadow soldiers on people that will allow him to contact the rulers through these hunters. He can tell who's a friend, who's a foe, and who he'll need to fight. As he was thinking this, he senses something, and Woo also tells him to be careful. Jin-Woo tells him, "You don't have to worry about that." It was Thomas, who was coming straight toward him. Thomas says, "I wanted to ask you one thing." Showing him his arm, he tells Jin-Woo, because the damage it took from magic power was too great, the healer's healing magic isn't working on it. Even the doctor said the same thing. Though it is slowly recovering, it's still far from being completely healed. He asks, "You could have single-handedly wiped out my entire guild after dealing with me. But even amidst all the commotion, not a single guild member died, excluding Huang, who was the cause of the commotion. Why did you let us live?" Jin-Woo tells him, "Because you did not commit a sin that deserves death." Hearing that, Thomas starts to walk away, saying, "I plan to have a great funeral for Mr. Huang. He has committed a sin that deserves death, but please let him have a funeral." Raising his hand, he tells Jin-Woo, "After my arm heals, I'd like to have a meal with you. If you give my manager your contact information, I'll contact you later." Laura tells Jin-Woo, "My master just showed his gratitude towards you for not harming his guild members." She tells him, no matter how he looks, he's actually a shy person. She asks for his contact info, so they can contact him in the future, as Thomas wants to give him a gift of gratitude and asks if there is anything he wants. But Jin-Woo tells her there's no need to do that. Laura tells Jin-Woo, Thomas is very competitive, so he becomes uneasy when he feels he owes someone a favor. Anything will do. So could you please tell me something? Jin-Woo thinks for a minute and tells her, maybe a useful dagger. After she leaves, Agent White tells Jin-Woo, shall we meet and greet the hunters that are on the list? He adds, I will be your guide. Jin-Woo tells him, there is no need for you to do that. He asks, is there a person missing from the list? I don't see the rank 6 hunter. White tells him, we lost contact with him a couple of days before the conference. The secret agency and the Brazilian government both have yet to find his whereabouts. Hearing that, Jin-Woo wonders if the hunter has already been caught by the killers and thinks. That leaves 7 people on the list. Back in Korea, Chairman Go-Gun, he is sitting in his office, feeling his heart. He thinks it's quite strange. My heart refuses to stop shaking these days. Seeing his hand that was shaking, he thinks it has been this way for a couple of years now, but I can feel it's getting worse recently. He wonders if this is his limit. He remembers what the doctors told him, that he could lose his life within half a year if he keeps up with this work. But since then, 2 years have passed, and he has reached where he is now. He thinks, I can't do much since it seems this is my limit. I should rather be thankful I held out for this long, that as he was thinking, he receives a call. He picks it up, and it was his wife, who was asking if he was all right. After the call, he says, she's such a worrywart. I was just about to go back, but all of a sudden, he senses a presence in the room and sits back up. As he looks to the side, he sees Sillid, the monarch of Frost. Looking at him, the chairman thinks, I wonder if I could have a proper conversation with him, as I wasn't able to sense him when he arrived. Sensing his mana, he thinks, he's not someone I can take on alone. Sillid tells him, This place has already been isolated from the outside world. The chairman wonders if he was dreaming right now. Scylla attacks him with a piece of ice, saying, "If this was a dream, do you think you could feel that?" Seeing this, the chairman says, "I will ask you once more. Who are you?" Scylla, getting up, says, "I was hoping you would recognize me without me having to tell you, but it looks like you are a mere human after all." Hearing that, the chairman wonders what he was talking about. Scylla lets out a mana wave, saying, "I don't have an interest in playing around with weaklings. Reveal yourself, fragment of luminosity. Perhaps you are worried that your medium will break if you do, but it's bound to break sooner or later, no matter what you do. And if you're really worried about something like that, then this conversation is pointless." He shoots an ice ball towards the chairman, directly hitting him. With a smirk on his face, Scylla says, "We meet at last." As he sees two glowing eyes in the dust staring at him, he throws another attack towards the chairman, but it is easily deflected. As the dust clears, we see the chairman standing unharmed, even after being hit directly by one of Scylla's attacks. Scylla calls him the most brilliant fragment of luminosity. The chairman tells Scylla, "You isolated my office from the outside world and trapped it in a dimensional crack. That's not so bad." Hearing that, Scylla tells him, "I've been looking for you for a long time. To think you were struggling to use your true power while trapped inside a broken medium. We have already found the location of all 7 of your fragments, and we've broken 2 of them. All I wanted was to see the embarrassment on your prideful face before I killed you. Now that I've seen it, I can destroy you without any regrets." The chairman, furious, tells him, "Try it if you can, Monarch of the Frost." Hearing that, Scylla says, "So you're choosing to fight? How foolish. You, who are merely borrowing the body of a human, versus me, who has completely conquered one. Do you really think you can land even a single hit on me?" Scylla prepares to fight, covering the room with ice and attacking the chairman. But the chairman simply headbutts the ice, shattering it, leaps towards Scylla, and throws a punch. However, Scylla is too fast, managing to dodge and counterattacking by manifesting ice, almost piercing through the chairman's head. Seeing an opening, the chairman throws a punch at Scylla's face, and in the nick of time, Scylla freezes the chairman's entire arm, stopping the punch. The chairman, using his strength, breaks through the ice and reaches to grab Scylla. As the fight continues, the chairman's body starts to give out. He thinks, "I need to finish this while I can still move," and throws a powerful punch towards Scylla, planning to end the fight. But as the punch is about to connect, Scylla manifests an ice shield in front of him and is knocked back from the force of the punch. The chairman falls to his knee as his body gives out, thinking, "Is this my limit?" Seeing him like this, Scylla comments, "It seems you've reached the limit of your medium. How pitiful, fragment of luminosity." Before the chairman could react, Scylla, using his superhuman speed, approaches and pierces the chairman's chest with an ice sword. Smirking, he asks, "How much time do you think it will take for you to find a new medium? I wonder 1 year? Maybe 2 years? Unfortunately for you, our forces have already gathered. This world will be destroyed before you return. Your mistake was trying to protect this world. Did you really think you could defeat me without your guards?" To his shock, the chairman starts to smile and tells him, "Do you really think I fought against you for no reason? Just like we weren't able to predict that you would follow our footsteps, there was something important you missed as well." Scylla asks him what he's talking about. Gathering his remaining energy, the chairman throws a fireball at Scylla, but Scylla dodges, and the attack lands on the wall behind him. Seeing this, Scylla says, "You almost had me. Is this what that important thing was?" The chairman replies, "Yes, this is exactly what I was talking about." As Scylla turns towards the wall, he sees a crack in the barrier. The barrier breaks. "Just for this, you risked everything? I doubt anything would change, even if this were to work." The chairman gives a signal, and a shadow soldier that Jin-Woo had left with him emerges, managing to reach the real world. Seeing the creature, Scylla asks, "What can one single resident of the Abyss do against us?" Before he can complete his sentence, he notices something about the soldier and realizes he needs to take out the creature immediately. He rushes after the ant, but it has already escaped the dimension and reached Earth. Scylla brings out his weapon and prepares to kill the creature. He manages to strike it, but his expression changes after seeing something. It was Jin-Woo, who had stopped his attack using nothing but his bare hands. Jin-Woo grabs Scylla by the neck and asks, "Who the hell are you?" calling him an I-self. Scylla, calling Jin-Woo the monarch of shadows, says, "The number of soldiers I can feel from your shadows. Why didn't you come into contact with us? Even after gathering such a significant number of troops, you must be the thing I was missing, the one he told me about." He starts to freeze Jin-Woo's arm. While being frozen, Jin-Woo thinks if this monster is magic using. Summoning his dagger, he shatters the ice with no effort. Looking down at the creature, Scylla tells him, "Why don't we stop here for today? I'm not here to fight with our lives on the line." Jin-Woo asks him what he's talking about. Pointing towards the chairman's office, Scylla says, "Didn't you come here to save that human?" Jin-Woo thinks, "Now that I think about it, this ant is the one I put on the chairman." Horrified, he sees the chairman's condition. Manifesting an ice sword, Scylla tells Jin-Woo to choose. Will you fight against me or save him? He throws the weapon towards the chairman. Jin-Woo uses his ruler authority to grab the weapon, but a notification opens up instead, saying the opponent's magic is resisting the authority of the ruler. Panicking, Jin-Woo throws his dagger towards the projectile, but it dodges the dagger on its own and heads toward the chairman. Jin-Woo has no choice. He chooses to save the chairman and stops the attack, deflecting it back out of the building. As he looks at Scylla, he sees that Scylla has already opened a portal and is leaving. Jin-Woo uses his dagger rush, summoning all his daggers and attacking Scylla. One of the weapons manages to hit Scylla on the shoulder. Scylla says, "You're but a mere vessel, and you dare to put a scratch on me?" He starts to leave, saying, "I, Monarch of the Frost, will retreat for now. Wait until next time. For now, think of a nearly dead human as a gift for your shadow army." After he leaves, Jin-Woo turns towards the chairman, thinking, "I couldn't sense anything, even when things got to this state because of that barrier." Seeing the chairman's condition, Jin-Woo thinks, "It's not something I could heal using a healing potion," and calls for Baru. Hearing his call, Baru, with lightning-fast speed, arrives at the location. Jin-Woo asks him to use his healing ability to save the chairman at all costs. Baru starts to heal him, but after a while, he tells Jin-Woo, "My healing didn't work on him." Jin-Woo brings out the holy water of life as a last resort, thinking this might heal his injuries. But the chairman, in his final moments, stops him, saying, "Please don't." He thanks Jin-Woo for coming to save him. Jin-Woo tells him to wait a bit longer as he will send him to a hospital. The chairman tells him, "It's no use. Nothing can be done after taking damage from those kinds of attacks." He tells Jin-Woo that he is relieved that Jin-Woo was there to fight against the monsters and thankful that Jin-Woo possesses such power. He tells Jin-Woo that someday he will encounter a moment where he will have to choose a side and requests him to please remain on the side of the humans. He tells Jin-Woo that he always wanted to fight alongside young hunters like him, saying he does not regret anything since he can leave things in the hands of youngsters like Jin-Woo. He drifts away. He tells Jin-Woo, "The reason my heart didn't stop beating until now was to meet you. It was all to meet you." He closes his eyes, saying, "What a relief. Thank you very much." Fast forward. The news that Brazil's hunter, Jonas, was found dead in a nearby river, and that the Korean Hunter Association's chairman was brutally murdered after being stabbed in his heart, is making headlines around the world. The whole world is in a state of panic. Mainstream media around the world is focused on the deaths of the hunters. The U.S. Hunter Association even issued a joint statement about this event. Humans are protected by the hunters, but who will protect the hunters? The death of world-class hunters worldwide is a threat on a different level that we see Jin-Woo attending the chairman's funeral. He turns his attention toward Woo, asking if he is all right. Woo, completely broken after the chairman's death, apologizes to Jin-Woo, saying, "I haven't been myself lately." He then asks Jin-Woo, "The monster that killed the chairman, was it impossible to kill, even with your power?" Jin-Woo tells him that by the time he had arrived, it was already too late. Woo says, "It still doesn't feel real. Just yesterday, he told me that he wanted to hear about my stay in the US. He urged me to hurry back to the country, and now he's gone." He thanks Jin-Woo for trying to save the chairman in his last moments. But Jin-Woo, enraged, replies, "No, I will kill it. I swear upon my life that I will kill the monster who killed the chairman, and then I will accept your thanks." He then asks Woo if he can call the reporters. Fast forward, we see Jin-Woo in a press conference, wanting to address the current danger to the world. He says a monster colony with very high intelligence is targeting world-class hunters. They are far stronger than many hunters out there, and they do not care about weapons or ways to murder. These monsters specialize in blocking open spaces with magic and isolating their prey. So, those hunters who believe they could be a target of these monsters should stay around comrades who are willing to protect them. He recalls the creature, who called himself the Monarch of Frost when teleporting away, and how it was impossible to win against such beings, even for the strongest hunters. Jin-Woo instructs the viewers, "If you do not possess such comrades, contact me through the Korean Hunters Association." The scene shifts to a cave where all the monarchs are gathered, discussing their next move. Sillid tells the monarchs, "The Shadow Monarch is on the surface of the earth." Yogimut, the king of demonic specters, asks, "Didn't you say there was no vessel that could fully contain his true powers? Isn't that the reason the Dragon King can't remain on the surface of the earth?" Sillid replies, "He's more of a threat than the fragment of brilliant light," and he tells the rest of the monarchs that he will take care of Jin-Woo. He asks if they are willing to help. Hearing this, Tarnak, the king of monstrous humanoids and the monarch of the Iron Body, tells Sillid, "By picking a fight against him, you're only looking for suicide. Your opponent is one of the strongest of the 9 monarchs." He suggests they wait for the Monarch of Destruction, the Dragon King, to return. Sillid counters, "Currently, we might be on the run, but we are the monarchs, and you say we should wait for the Dragon King? The only chance we have to defeat the Shadow Monarch is now, while he is still in human form." He asks them to help him, promising to take responsibility and return Jin-Woo to nothingness. Tarnak says, "Count me out of this," and Yogimut adds, "I don't want to become like the monarch of White Flames either." Rakan, the king of beasts and the monarch of fangs, agrees to help Sillid. Hearing this, Tarnak reminds him of what happened to the monarch of White Flames after he was defeated, saying, "I don't want to be caught by the Shadow Monarch's authority and suffer through an eternal slumber." Rakan replies, "He can't turn us into shadow soldiers in our original form." Tarnak informs him, "The Shadow Monarch and the Administrator are working together, so he might be able to turn us into shadow soldiers now." Tarnak and Yogimut begin to leave, saying, "I do not want to turn into a tool in his world." After they leave, Rakan asks Sillid for proof that Jin-Woo is still human. Sillid shows him the dagger he used to attack, saying, "I applied poison onto my dagger. It's not something the Shadow Monarch would do." Hearing this, Quretia, the Queen of Insects and the Monarch of Plagues, shows interest and says, if the Shadow Monarch could fully control his human body, he wouldn't have had to resort to such trickery. Sillid asks her if she would join him, and Quretia replies, "I will help you." Hearing this, Rakan says, "We will kill the Shadow Monarch together." Meanwhile, Jin-Woo stands on top of a building, trying to locate Sillid. He thinks, "I cannot sense his magic power." He remembers their fight and thinks he didn't have a shadow with him, and he said he was in his original form. Jin-Woo recalls what the monarch of the giants told him, that the monarchs and rulers are all in their original forms and cannot become shadow soldiers. Back at the Hunters Association, Woo and the rest of the Hunter Association officials are in a meeting to select a new chairman. They discuss how the position has been empty for about a week. They note that the fact that an S-rank hunter was the chairman of the association had many symbolic meanings. And now that the association overseeing 5 great guilds has lost such a figure, they wonder who will be able to control the guilds now. They mention that even though high-rank hunters are very influential, extra caution is needed in bringing in outsiders. After a long discussion, all of the directors decide to choose Hunter Wu as the new president of the association. Wu, taken by surprise, asks why they are choosing him. The directors tell him that Wu had most closely assisted the president and gained the most skill. He is also very capable in terms of leadership and has the ability to call hunters into action. They explain there is no law that only an S-rank hunter can take the place of president. We need a president who casts influence among hunters and a presence hunters fear. Wu, you are the perfect candidate. On top of that, you possess the ability to move around the great forces of Korea. They tell him they cannot force their decision on him, but ask if he would carefully consider accepting their proposal. Back in the US, at the Scavenger Guild headquarters, Thomas, along with Laura, is going down an elevator. Thomas tells Laura, "It's been a while since I last came to the underground." As they make their way through the facility, Laura asks Thomas if he is really planning on giving that away as a gift. Thomas asks, "Do you think it's not worth the lives of me and the guild members?" She replies, "That's not the reason." Thomas asks, "Do you think I lack the skills as a hunter to use this?" As they stand in front of it, Thomas comments, "As awesome as always." Laura tells him, "There are only 2 of them in the entire world, and I am sure that number will stay consistent throughout the future." Thomas tells her she is right, and Laura asks, "Are you still going to give it to him?" Thomas replies, "That's the reason I'm going to give it to him." He adds, "Don't you think it's a waste that the best of all weapons is just rotting here, gathering dust?"
And the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.
Back in Korea, Jinha is watching the news that Hunter Woo Jin-chul has been promoted to chairman of the Hunters Association. Seeing this, she says, "They say the chairman was murdered, and now a handsome man has become the next chairman. This country is unstable, and so is the rest of the world." She looks at her mother, who is washing dishes, and hugs her from behind. Her mother says, "If you don't have anything better to do, could you please take out the trash?" Jinna replies, "I'm too lazy to do that." She tells her mother, "We should move to a new place." Her mother says, "I like this house." Jinna asks, "What is it that you like about this old apartment?" Changing the subject, her mother asks her to retrieve the clothes from the washer. As Jinha opens the door, she is shocked and starts to run, calling for her mother. Meanwhile, outside the Ajin Guild headquarters, reporters have gathered after hearing the news that Thomas Andre is inside the building. Jinho is trying to control his emotions, unsure what to do as both Thomas and Leonard Nierman, the strongest hunter in Germany, are present in the office. He thinks 2 hours have already passed since they arrived. "Where are you, Jin-Woo? Please pick up my calls." Meanwhile, Leonard is worried, thinking, Thomas Andre, the Goliath, is searching for Jin-Woo. Will I be able to meet him today? Thomas asks Jinho something, and Laura translates. Is Mr. Jin-Woo in the middle of a raid? It seems like he doesn't come to the office regularly. Jinho, with a shaky voice, replies, "Yes." As they are talking, Jin-Woo enters the office. Everyone is happy to see him. Jin-Woo notices Thomas sitting in the office and thinks, "I saw a mob of reporters outside the building. I guess Thomas really is here." Jinho, almost in tears, asks Jin-Woo where he was and why he wasn't picking up his calls. Looking at his clothes, he wonders what Jin-Woo was doing. Jin-Woo replies, "There have been a lot of gate outbreaks recently. I can't be lazy around at a time like this." Thomas approaches Jin-Woo, saying, "Long time no see." Jinho, observing, wonders, "Are these 2 going to fight inside the guild office?" Jin-Woo asks Thomas, "What brought you all the way to Korea?" Thomas tells him, "I promised you that we would grab a meal together once my arm fully heals." He tells Jin-Woo that he also brought a fantastic gift for him that piqued Jin-Woo's interest, and Thomas says, "I'm happy to see Mr. Jin-Woo looking forward to it." and asks if they should move to a more comfortable place, as the gift is a bit too dangerous to hand over in a place like this. Hearing that, Jin-Woo thinks, did he bring me a bomb? While Jin-Ho was thinking it's suspicious. It could be a trap. Jin-Woo asks the second man about his identity, and the man introduces himself as Leonard Neerman from Germany. Hearing that, Jin-Woo thinks he must be here to ask for a protection commission. Before he can say anything, Thomas cuts into their talk, saying, "Shall we get going?" Neerman prepares to go with them, and Thomas asks him, "Who are you to follow us?" He tells Thomas, "I've already waited more than 2 hours for Hunter Jin-Woo. I think I deserve a spot in this meeting." Thomas gets angry and tells him, "What we are about to talk about is top secret. It's not something someone like you can barge into." As they start to leave, Neerman thinks, "I've never been treated like this before." After some time, we see both of them sitting in a restaurant, enjoying a meal. Thomas signals to his men, saying, "You don't know how long I've been waiting for this moment," as he puts a case on the table. Jin-Woo asks, "What is that?" And Thomas asks him if he can feel the item's power. He starts to open up the case, saying, "This is me showing my gratitude for my guild members." And Jin-Woo is at a loss for words after seeing the daggers. He asks if this was from the Kamish raid. Jin-Woo asks, "Isn't Kamish's corpse currently being kept by the Hunters Bureau?" Thomas tells him, "Back then, they decided to listen to what the US government told them, considering compliance could get us something more valuable than money. But Kamish's largest and sharpest tooth, the canine tooth, I had pulled out when he bit me. It was something I was allowed to keep as a souvenir. But the tooth was too short for it to be made into a sword, so I turned it into a dagger instead. Who knew that would come in useful?" He tells Jin-Woo this was his gift. Looking at the dagger's stats, Jin-Woo is amazed that its attack power is 1500. Compared to the Demon King's dagger, his strongest weapon, it was on a whole other league, as the Demon Dagger's attack power was only 220. He starts to swing the weapon to get a feel for it, and Thomas tells him, "Even if I strengthen my defenses with my enhancement skills, they could still easily penetrate right through them." Looking at the weapon, Jin-Woo thinks, "It definitely feels different than normal daggers, as it is reacting greatly to my magic power, almost as if it's greeting me." Everyone in the room is sweating just by sensing the mana being emitted by the weapon. Thomas asks Laura if she still thinks that the choice he made was a mistake. He asks Jin-Woo if he liked the present, and Jin-Woo asks if he can really take this for free. Thomas tells him, "What I mean by free is that I'm pretty sure this exchange is to my advantage. As compared to the lives of me and my guild mates, what I'm giving you is dirt cheap." As they were talking, both of them felt an overwhelming mana. Thomas asked Jin-Woo if he also felt that. They exited the building, and looking at something, Jin-Woo thought, could that be the true form of the magical energy that the doctor mentioned in his presentation? Thomas tells Jin-Woo, "I can't believe my eyes. It's the first time I've seen one this big," adding, "It's far bigger than the one Kamish jumped out of," saying maybe the world is trying to tell us that it has jumped out of our boundaries of common sense. The story shifts to the US, where Dr. Belzer is being questioned by some officials about the appearance of the gate in the skies of Korea. He tells the people present in the room, "I have been warning about the enormous amount of magical power that was gathering in the skies since a few days ago. The gate that appeared in the skies of Seoul is just the beginning, and they can expect to see more gates like this one appearing in the skies of many different countries." They ask his opinion on the matter, as he has been researching the gates and magical beasts for a very long time, and the doctor tells them to pray that this happening won't end as a tragedy. Back in Korea, Jin-Woo is on top of Kaisel in the air, thinking, "I can't enter the gate. It almost feels as if I'm blocked off by a wall. If it was a normal wall, I could have broken it down, but to think this is a wall that not even the awakened can pass through, and wonders if the being inside this gate is different than those that he has seen up until now. Looking down, he thinks, my friends and family are under this gate, and I don't intend to let them pass by me so easily." As he was thinking, he received a call from Chairman Woo. Jin-Woo asks if he looked into the request he made. Chairman tells him they did, and he had requested the Hunters Bureau to scan the entire area with a satellite. Chairman tells Jin-Woo that no new gates appeared anywhere else in the world after the appearance of this massive gate. Woo tells Jin-Woo that they were planning to evacuate the civilians who live near the gate and asks Jin-Woo what he is planning to do. Fast forward to the next day. Jin-Woo, along with Baru, was sparring in the Hunter Association gymnasium. Baru was on the offensive, but was unable to land a single blow on Jin-Woo, as Jin-Woo had grown much stronger than the last time they fought. As Baru was striking Jin-Woo, he easily stopped his attack with his hand and asked him if he was really trying his hardest. He lets go of his hand, and Baru tells him, "I would never dare to do that." Hearing that, Jin-Woo tells him, "It's all right, as I just wanted to break a sweat a little bit," telling him he was the only one who could make him do so. After the talk, Jin-Woo tells Baru, "Let's start," and Baru prepares to attack. He leaps toward Jin-Woo, but Jin-Woo easily dodges the attack. He attacks Jin-Woo and blocking it. Jin-Woo tells Baru, "You become stronger after being promoted to the rank of commander." As they continue, Jin-Woo tells him, "Did you know that there can only be one commander in an army? And when Igris and Greed reach the general rank, it'll take no time for them to reach the commander rank. If you don't want to get your position taken by one of them, keep up the good work." That motivates Baru, and he starts to go all out against Jin-Woo. As they fight, Jin-Woo thinks it's still not enough. Even though Baru is the strongest unit in my shadow army, he is still not strong enough to fight against those guys. As Baru was about to land a blow, Jin-Woo grabs his arm and buries it in the ground. Baru, stuck, is unable to move, and Jin-Woo delivers a bone-crushing punch to his ribs, launching him into a wall. After recovering, Baru tells Jin-Woo, "I am continuously amazed by my king's mighty strength." Hearing that, Jin-Woo says, "I think I need to start blocking historical drama channels so you can't watch more." Jin-Woo thinks, now that the test is over, I should start cleaning this place up. He calls the chairman, telling him to hear him out without getting upset. He tells him, "I have around 300 ants that are great at doing labor work." The scene shifts to Thomas and Laura. As she was asking him if they were leaving for the US, Thomas tells her, "How could I leave behind something so big and beautiful?" Laura tells him, "It's big, but I don't know about beautiful." Thomas explains that everything that makes the heart flutter is defined as beautiful. The fire-breathing dragon, the enormous gate, Hunter Jinwoo's strength, they are all beautiful things. He tells her there is no gate back in the US anyway, so what's the point of going back? She tells him the Hunter's Bureau is worried. He tells her, "What a joke. There is no place safer than Hunter Jinwoo. Besides, if we don't stop it here, there will be nothing beyond. That's why I want to know whether this will become the last moment in human history or the new beginning." Fast forward to the next day. We see the people evacuating the area where the gate had appeared. Back in Jinwoo's home, we see Jaina asking her mother why they were not evacuating like everyone else. Her mother tells her, "If this place is going to turn into a battlefield, wouldn't it be better for us to choose where we want to die? Plus, our house isn't even within the evacuation zone." Hearing that, Jaina gets angry, saying, "I'll be a college student starting next year. I could drink whenever I want and enjoy college life while living alone. My life is just starting, so there is no way I'd want to die like this." Her mother tells her, "Jinwoo will protect us, just like how your father protected us." The scene shifts back to Jinwoo, who was sitting on top of a building looking at the gate, thinking, "Can I successfully close it without there being any casualties?" He brings out his phone, thinking, "Who would I be spending my final moments with?" The story shifts to Hunter Cha, who was practicing in a dojo. Her master tells her, "I have been sensing hesitation from Miss Cha's sword recently. I'm worried that there is a fear building up inside you." As he was talking, Cha noticed her phone ringing. She goes to pick it up, and the master tells her, "I think I'm speaking too much here. A hunter needs to pick up their calls." After hearing what the other person on the call told her, she tells the master, "Something has come up suddenly, so I think I need to get going now." After she leaves, the master stands there smiling, thinking, so that's how it is. Fast forward, we see Jinwoo and Hunter Cha walking in an amusement park as the people around them were excited to see them both together. Jinwoo comments, There are more people than I thought there would be considering the current situation. Cha asks him if he likes places like these. He tells her, I don't especially like it, but I wanted to come at least once. Hearing that, Cha asks, why did you bring me to a place you've wanted to come at least once? Jin-Woo replies, because you're the only friend I have. Hearing that, Cha wonders what he was talking about, and Jin-Woo reminds her of the double dungeon, how she told the architect that they were friends. She asks him if he was listening, and Jin-Woo tells her, I have a really good hearing. She thinks, now that I think about it, 2 years have already passed since I've become a hunter, going out with such a light heart. How long has it been since that has happened? Looking at Jin-Woo, she thinks, something feels different whenever I'm with this person. I can sense a unique fragrance. While Jin-Woo was asking her if she wants to try everything in the park and smiling, she tells him, yes, I want to try everything. Seeing her like this, Jin-Woo thinks, I'm not the only one who wanted to come to this kind of place. But as they started to ride the rides in the park, nothing seemed fun. Even the fake monsters were afraid of them. After a while, they sat down to eat something, and Jin-Woo asks Cha if she wasn't having fun. She tells him, it's fun. Jin-Woo asks her, why didn't you scream even once? Thinking the rides are too slow for an S-rank hunter, he asks her, weren't the rides a little slow? And Cha agrees. He tells her, why don't we go ride something actually fun? We see Kaizel going through the clouds with Jin-Woo and Cha on top. Jin-Woo asks, how is it? Cha tells him, it's fast, high, and also beautiful. She asks, why did you go to an amusement park when you had something like this? Jin-Woo tells her, that amusement park was built on the gate my father disappeared in, so I've always wanted to go there at least once, saying I wanted to properly say goodbye. Cha thanks him, saying, you did nothing but show generosity to me. Jin-Woo tells her, I still have something I want to show you. Fast forward, both of them were sitting under the sky, looking at the stars as a shooting star streaked across the sky. Fast forward to the next day, a hunter was walking, thinking that monster of a gate will open in a few days. I'm a B rank now. I can't be letting my guard down. As he was walking, he bumps into someone and asks the person to stop. It was Rockin', and the man, not knowing who he was standing in front of, starts to shout. The people around them, thinking a fight was going on, start to gather around them. The man asks Rockin' to apologize for bumping into him, saying, I'm a B rank now, a relatively high rank hunter. As he was screaming, Rockin' opened his mouth and swallowed the man's head, biting it off. Seeing this, the hunters in the area were horrified. Rockin' lets out a mana wave, destroying everything around him and throwing all the hunters in the air. He tells the hunters, listen closely. As of now, I will start hunting you. My teeth and nails will rip apart your weak skin and flesh. Saying, I'm the king of the beast monarch. Stop me if you dare. Back in the forest, Hunter Cha was drinking water from a lake as Jin-Woo approaches her, saying, I know a hotel around this area that serves really good breakfast, and asks if she wants to go there to wash up and have a meal. He summons Kaizel, saying, let's go. Meanwhile, back in the Hunter Association, a person was informing Chairman Wu that there is a monster outside who is attacking all the hunters present in the area. Wu asks about the casualties, and the man tells him, we are unable to confirm the exact number as of now. Hearing that, Wu thinks, there should be at least a couple of hours until the dungeon break. I've already got my hands full with the gate, and some monster decided to show up. Wu asks about Jin-Woo, and the man tells him, we could not get a hold of him. After some time, a man informs Wu that a hunter who is able to face the monster has appeared. Wu asks if it was Jin-Woo. The man tells him, no, but he said he is a world-class hunter who just happened to be around the area. It was Leonard. As he stands in front of the monster, he thinks, if he can really do this, and wonders, perhaps the reason I stayed in Seoul was because I was fated to defeat that monster. As he was thinking, Thomas grabbed him by his head and pushed him back, saying, you'll only get in my way. Back at the restaurant, Jin-Woo was enjoying a meal with Hunter Cha as he receives a call from Wu, who was asking him where he has been, as they were not able to get a hold of him until now. Jin-Woo tells him, "I was outside the service zone until now." He informs Jin-Woo about the situation in the city, as a monster is running rampant in the middle of Seoul. Jin-Woo asks how many enemies there are, and Woo tells him, there is only one. Hearing that, Jin-Woo thinks, every hunter is gathered in Seoul right now. They should be on their edge in order to stop the dungeon break of the gigantic gate, and they're getting destroyed by a single magical beast that appeared out of nowhere. Woo tells him an entire guild that came across him was annihilated in an instant, and informs him that Thomas Andre is currently standing off against that beast. Jin-Woo thinks it was impossible, as he placed a shadow soldier on Thomas and the hunters, instructing them to report back if even something ordinary happens. As he tries to communicate with the shadows, he notices the signal with the soldiers in Seoul is strangely faint. It's like if something is purposely making the signal weaker, and wonders what was going on. He tells Hunter Cha that there is a problem in Korea right now. She asks if the dungeon break occurred, and Jin-Woo tells her it's something else. He asks the chairman if the monster has a shadow. Meanwhile, Thomas instructs all the hunters to start rescuing the citizens. Looking at Rockin, he says, a beast has gone rampant without knowing their place, and it's only right for a mad beast to be beaten to death. Both of them were emitting immense amounts of mana as the fight starts. Rockin attacks Thomas, but it had no effect on him, and Thomas throws a punch on Rockin's face, knocking him back. He tries to land another punch, but Rockin dodges and is about to strike Thomas, but gets slammed to the ground instead. Hunter Choi had also arrived at the location and was asking how the situation was there. A hunter tells him they're still evacuating the people. He tells Choi that the Fiend Guild and the White Tiger Guild were both dispatched. Sensing the creature's mana, Choi thinks Thomas is fighting off against the mysterious magic beast, but this massive presence feels even worse than the one I felt during the Jeju Island raid, and wonders what kind of a monster the Goliath is fighting against. Back in the fight, Rockin was seen flying through the air and smashed into a building, and Thomas was standing there after delivering the punch. But that wasn't enough to keep Rockin down, and he jumps back towards Thomas, hitting him in his chest. The attack was powerful, but Thomas managed to stop it. Grabbing Rockin, he picks him up and slams him to the ground, thinking it was over, but Rockin kicks him in the face, launching him in the air. As Thomas lands on his feet, he prepares to use reinforcement. The scene shifts to the White Tigers Guild, who had arrived at the location. Hunter Beck instructs his members to be ready for anything, and as he was saying that, something flies by him, crashing into a building. As the dust settles, he sees it's the magic beast that has been reported to have appeared on the site. He turns towards Thomas, who had completely transformed. Thomas tells them to hurry and take cover. Looking at Rockin, Beck thinks it's definitely not a normal monster, and thinks he should transform as well. But before he could do anything, he sees Rockin standing in front of him, and feeling its power, Beck is frozen in place. He thinks about the sixth sense of the animal that was telling him not to be recognized as prey. As Rockin walks by him, he thinks, I can't even make eye contact. Rockin, using his ability, lifts all of the cars around him in the air and throws them at Thomas. But he starts to feel something. It was Thomas who was pulling him towards himself. As Rockin gets close, he smashes him into the ground and continues to punch him while thinking, what is this feeling? The feeling of uneasiness is closing in on me. It doesn't feel like I'm going to win. As he was thinking, Rockin grabs his fist and starts to get back up, saying to think a mere puppet of a fragment could be this powerful. He tells Thomas he has seen enough of his petty tricks. He asks Thomas if he was afraid and starts to attack him while all the hunters were watching the scene in horror. As he was doing that, Rockin notices something. He reaches out for Thomas's shadow as he had noticed Jin-Woo's soldier. He pulls the ant out, saying, what are you doing hiding in the shadows? And smashes it, saying, you're in the way. He grabs Thomas by his neck, saying, shall we continue? Since you seem to be confident in your strength, why don't we have a little battle of strength? As the armor breaks, Rockin is stunned to see that it was empty. Thomas grabs him from the back, saying, who do you think you are, blabbering on so arrogantly, and breaks his neck. But he is shocked when Rockin recovers completely from that. He grabs Thomas by his face and slams him to the ground, saying, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm starting to feel hungry again." But before he could do anything, he gets hit by a mana attack. As he recovers, he sees it was Leonard who was telling him, "I won't let you do as you please." Looking at Rockin, he thinks he's getting chills just by standing in front of him. Thomas, from the back, tells him to run or he will die. Leonard tells him he is well aware of that, but I'm still a hunter after all. Thinking, I have no regret. Even if this will be my final moment in life, I will make this choice many times over. A proud death rather than a meaningless life. He looks at Rockin, telling himself he made the right choice over and over again. But as he sees him coming towards him, his expression changes and he says, "I made the wrong choice." As he thought he was going to die, another beast came from the back, attacking Rockin. It was Kaisel, and as he disappears, Rockin notices something in the air. It was Jin-Woo, who kicks him straight on his head, burying him in the ground. He instructs Leonard to take Thomas to a safe place while Rockin starts to get back up from the rubble, saying, "It's true, I can smell the shadow guy from that human." Looking at him, Jin-Woo thinks his killing intent is quite intense. And on top of that, he isn't the only one. Behind Jin-Woo, Koratia starts to appear, saying, "I'm guessing that means I can eat that human's body. I was always curious about what another monarch would taste like." Jin-Woo sees that Scylla is also there, and they surround Jin-Woo as a notification tells him that the monarchs recognize him as an enemy. As all four of them are prepared to fight, their mana is seen from a distance, and Jin-Woo summons all his soldiers to attack the enemy. As the soldiers charge towards the monarchs, Scylla uses his breath to freeze all of them in place. He tells Jin-Woo, "Your soldiers cannot move a single step within this prison." Koratia tells Jin-Woo, "You should have left my children alone. At least it's been a while since I've seen them, after all." Looking at the soldiers, Scylla comments, "To think he was trying to use this kind of soldiers to get in our way. This is an act of belittling the other monarchs. On top of that, I don't think that the human was able to absorb the power of the Shadow Monarch fully." He tells Jin-Woo that the Shadow Monarch was the greatest monarch, but they must not look down on the other monarch's strength. Jin-Woo breaks the ice after hearing that, and seeing this, Scylla gets angry. Jin-Woo, pointing at him, says, "I will definitely kill at least you." The fight starts, and Scylla summons his ice golems to fight. Koratia, using her power, resurrects the defeated hunters to fight Jin-Woo, and all of them start to attack him. But Jin-Woo was too fast for the minions, and he easily dodges all the incoming attacks from them and leaps towards Scylla. Seeing this, Scylla is surprised, but before Jin-Woo can get close to him, Rockin stops him, and they start to exchange blows. Seeing the weapon in Jin-Woo's hand, Rockin asks if he really thinks he can damage him with a mere piece of metal. But to his horror, Jin-Woo chops off his hand, saying, "I'm sure I couldn't have if it was just any other piece of metal." But before he could deliver the final blow, Koratia intervenes and saves Rockin. Using this distraction, Rockin also reattaches his severed hand, and Jin-Woo notices that he is surrounded by all the minions and monarchs. As he is thinking of his next move, one of the shadow soldiers breaks free from the ice, and as Jin-Woo looks at it, he sees it was Baru, who was furious and was charging towards Koratia, saying, "That insect woman dared to lay her hands on my liege." Seeing Baru, Scylla and Rockin are surprised and wonder how a commander-level entity could be in the hands of a human. While Koratia prepares to fight, saying, "A child who doesn't recognize their mother needs to be punished." Baru is too strong and slices through her ability with no effort, leaving her stunned. He kneels before Jin-Woo, telling him, "You weren't being pushed back even when fighting against those of a superior species. As expected of my lord, I have never failed to be amazed by your limitless strength." As they are talking, Koratia's minions are coming straight towards them, and Jin-Woo, along with Baru, slices through all of the minions with ease. But from the back, Koratia attacks, taking out Baru and landing a hit on Jin-Woo, who goes flying into a building. As he is lying in the rubble, Scylla starts to rain down ice projectiles on Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo gets back up and starts to block against the incoming projectiles. Seeing this, Scylla asks, "How much longer can you hold out against our pincer attack?" As he looks down, he is stabbed in the heart, and Jin-Woo tells him, "I've already told you that you won't be getting out of here alive." Scylla gets furious and shouts at Jin-Woo, saying, "You insolent fool! A human like you dares say such a thing to a monarch, such as myself?" He pulls out the weapon from his chest. Seeing this, Jin-Woo thinks, he was hit in the heart. I guess that much isn't enough to be fatal for them, and throws an attack hitting Scylla directly. But as he looks at him, he notices Scylla smirking, and before he could react, Rakan was already behind him, summoning his weapon. He slices Jin-Woo's back, and Jin-Woo starts to bleed. Seeing this, Baru loses it, but before he could do anything, Koratia appears behind him, saying, "My name is Koratia, the monarch of plagues. I am the mother of every insect in existence." She grabs Baru, saying, "Even though you are an ungrateful insect who doesn't recognize their mother, I will still embrace you as one of my children." While Jin-Woo is on his knees after taking a fatal hit, Rakan, seeing his condition, tells him, "This is the end for you." Baru calls out to all the soldiers, saying, "What are you doing? Hurry up and assist our lord." Hearing him, Greed starts to break through the ice, saying, "I will be the one cutting the last breath of the enemy." Seeing him, Rakan says he must have been a stronger warrior in his lifetime. Scylla informs him that the high-ranking shadow soldiers have started to appear, and we see Turst, along with Igris and Iron, breaking through the ice prison. Seeing this, Scylla turns towards Jin-Woo, saying, "Your wounds are fatal," and prepares to end this, saying, "Playtime is long over." Jin-Woo, smirking, asks,
And the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.
Welcome back to Chapter 136 of Solo Leveling. Chapter 136 begins with Jin-Woo ordering all of his army to charge towards the final giant that was guarding the S-rank gate as he gives the signal. All of the summoned shadows start to charge towards the creature, and Jin-Woo decides to witness everything from a distance that as the creature sees all of the shadows charging towards him. He prepares to fight and lets out a mana wave. Jin-Woo, sensing its power, is shocked to see how the creature manages to slice his way through countless shadow soldiers. Seeing the creature fight, Jin-Woo thinks it has incredible strength. It killed 100 with just one swing. He comments about its power. "Even I had the urge to get out of this place because of its enormous magic power. It was an unpleasant feeling." He wonders how such a thing could exist and says there are two ways to get rid of an unpleasant feeling. First, run from the source and forget about it, or completely eradicate it as the fight continues. Jin-Woo notices that despite being outnumbered, the shadows are unable to get close to the monster. Even mana attacks have no effect on it. The creature catches a fireball with its bare hands and, using its brute strength, slices through the giants as the insects approach the creature. They start to attack its foot, but the creature easily takes them out. Seeing this, Baru gets angry and prepares to join the battle, but Jin-Woo stops him, saying, "Not yet." He thinks, "I have enough mana. I have to keep pushing until I find its weakness," that he regenerates all of the defeated soldiers as the fight drags on. Jin-Woo notices that the soldiers aren't even able to scratch the creature, even after landing solid blows. He realizes that the creature's magic power is wrapped around its body like armor, which is why it's not defending against physical attacks. However, it blocked an attack once just when it was about to get hit on the face by a fireball. Jin-Woo summons Kaisel and orders his strongest soldiers to join the battle. Baru, using his incredible speed, charges toward the creature's face, aiming for its eye, but the giant dodges before Baru can attack. Meanwhile, Igris is in the air, on top of Kaisel, preparing to attack using his electric magic. He launches a beam of lightning towards the creature's face, but the creature moves out of the way. Seeing this, Jin-Woo confirms that the creature's face is its weak spot. Its mana is only protecting its lower body, not its face. The creature swings its weapon toward Kaisel and manages to take it out of the fight. Just when it thought it was over, he notices Igris charging toward its face as Igris attacks. The creature manages to block it, but it gets distracted. Jin-Woo seizes the opportunity, attacks, and manages to injure the giant, causing it to scream in pain. Baru also attacks, distracting the creature long enough for Jin-Woo to prepare for another strike. Jin-Woo summons all of his best daggers and, using Ruler's authority, starts to attack the creature's face. Jinho and Hankawa, witnessing the fight from a distance, are speechless. Hankawa comments, "It's no longer a fight between hunters and monsters. It's more like a fight between monsters and monsters." Back in the fight, Jin-Woo uses Violent Slash to take out one of the creature's eyes as the creature screams in pain. He signals to Baru, who enters its face through the eye socket. Jin-Woo continues to use Violent Slash, attacking the creature from the outside, while Baru attacks it from the inside. The creature begins to puke blood from its mouth and finally falls to the ground. Jin-Woo receives a notification. You have defeated the enemy as he stands in front of the lifeless body of the giant. He thinks about the notification that said you have defeated the enemy and sees Jinho running toward him, calling him amazing and congratulating him for defeating the boss. Jin-Woo, however, realizes there was no message saying you have defeated the dungeon boss and thinks the raid isn't over yet. Looking at the giant, he notices there's no black smoke, making it impossible to extract the shadow. Suddenly, he senses something and signals Jinho to get back. Looking at the giant, he sees its Baru coming out of the creature's mouth. Jin-Woo thinks about the giant's magic power, which rivals Baru's presence even after its death, that as he's thinking about his next move, the gate starts emitting an intense light. He thinks it's a powerful magic storm and turns toward Jinho to see if he's alright. He sees Igris shielding Jinho from the storm. Jin-Woo notices that the gate is absorbing the giant's magic power and sees a cut on his face. He thinks, I got a cut just from the magic power. This has never happened before, but he instructs Jinho to wait as he prepares to enter the dungeon to find out what's going on. Jin-Woo jumps through the gate and, on the other side, sees a huge corridor. He thinks it makes sense since the giants would need this much space to cross over as he moves forward. Baru comes out and asks Jin-Woo if he heard that too. Jin-Woo replies yes, commenting on what a foul laughter it was. Suddenly, someone says, "It amuses me very much. You contemptible rulers, see for yourself who has come forth to meet me." In the middle of the room, Jin-Woo sees a giant chained up. Looking at the creature, Jin-Woo thinks it is the boss of this dungeon. The creature asks him to release the chains, saying, "I know the plans of the rulers. I must inform the other sovereigns." As the giant looks at Jin-Woo, it says, "You are not the one I know." Seeing its condition, Jin-Woo asks, "Was it the ones you call rulers who did this to you?" The giant answers yes. They're trying to use me as a foothold to strengthen the foundation for a real war. Jin-Woo tells the creature, "I tried to communicate with intelligent creatures, but none could explain their origin," and asks the giant about the rulers. The giant tells Jin-Woo that they are ancient enemies of the sovereigns. Hearing this, Jin-Woo asks, "If they tied you up like this, that means..." The creature replies, "Yes, I too am a sovereign." It warns Jin-Woo that the sovereigns and the rulers are all after him, and that he lacks the strength to face them right now. In order to fight against them, he'll need influence. Jin-Woo asks the giant to explain what he's talking about, and the giant asks him to release him, promising to help Jin-Woo in the fight against his enemies. Jin-Woo asks, "Do you really think I would believe the word of a monster?" The monster responds, "I will make you believe," and starts to chant something in a demonic language. A notification appears in front of Jin-Woo, saying, "The king of giants and the monarch of the beginning, Ligia, used the skill Oath of Faith." Seeing this, Jin-Woo accepts, and another notification appears, saying that the caster and the acceptant cannot lie to each other unless the contract is annulled by both parties. Ligia asks Jin-Woo again to free him, promising to help him against his enemies. Jin-Woo tries to say, "All right, I completely trust you," but is unable to because of the skill. Ligia tells him, "This is the power of the oath of faith. It's impossible for you to lie." Jin-Woo asks, "Why can you communicate freely unlike the other creatures?" Ligia asks who he's talking about, and Jin-Woo explains, "The monsters coming out of the gates." Ligia asks if he's referring to the residents of chaos. He explains that the residents coming out of the gates are stragglers, those who have been captured by the rulers for eternity, causing their consciousness to erode. But Ligia claims he is different. "I am a king. Unlike them, I maintain my rationality. I endured all those years waiting for the day I would be free. And then I met you." Jin-Woo asks if the ruler's army is made up of the ones with silver armor and wings. Ligia confirms they are the ruler's soldiers. Jin-Woo then asks why the rulers are sending monsters after humans. Ligia tells him, "I already told you, they're preparing for war. They want to turn this world into a battlefield to fight against the monarchs." Jin-Woo asks, "How does sending monsters turn Earth into a battlefield?" Ligia explains they want to insert magic energy into your world. Jin-Woo finally understands. If the monsters that emerged from the gates were disasters, then the magic energy from them was a blessing. Most civilians and hunters thought that magic stones and gems were the greatest sources of energy, but these things were the groundwork for war. Ligia explains that using the blood of those who possess magic power is the best way to plant magic in a world where it doesn't exist. The rulers decided to use the hostages they captured, and now magic energy is becoming concentrated in this world. This magic is going to strengthen the world, creating a battlefield that won't disintegrate under the shock of war. Jin-Woo asks what war Ligia is referring to, and Ligia explains, the rematch between the rulers and the monarchs. The world in which you live will turn into hell, and it will happen sooner than you think. He warns Jin-Woo that there isn't much time left, as neither the rulers nor the monarchs will stand silent once they realize they have made contact. The rulers may already be on the move. Jin-Woo asks, "Why do you keep making it sound like they're after me?" Ligia responds, "You really don't know? The power you possess is not truly your own. The fact that it's become yours means its original owner has betrayed the rulers, making you an enemy of both the rulers and the monarchs." But Ligia swears he will remain by Jin-Woo's side and fight with him. Jin-Woo tells him, "If you truly want to help, it would be easier for you to just become a shadow soldier." Ligia sees the shadow monarch standing in front of him and wonders what it was. For a second, he saw a glimpse of the monarch and tells Jin-Woo that rulers and monarchs are bound to spiritual forms. When they die, they can't become shadows. Ligia asks, "Was that enough to convince you to help me?" Jin-Woo summons his weapon and, moving towards Ligia, thinks, "I understand the situation, but why does something feel off right now?" He senses he is missing something and, as he begins to free Ligia, asks, "You said you will stay by my side, right?" Ligia replies, "Of course. If you help me, I will help you." This is a fair and absolute deal between monarchs. Jin-Woo, sensing something wrong, asks, "Are you on the human side?" Ligia remains silent. Jin-Woo asks again, "Why aren't you answering? Is it because of the oath of faith?" Jin-Woo then notices a magic crystal on the back of Ligia's neck. He says as long as that stone exists, you too must be hearing the ruler's words, telling you, just like every other monster, to kill humans. Ligia tries to grab Jin-Woo, but Jin-Woo dodges, saying, "The deal's off." He stabs Ligia in the chest, saying, "It's too dangerous to let you live. You could become a calamity." Hearing this, Ligia tells him, "You're wrong. The true calamity is you." Ligia tries to attack again, but Jin-Woo is too fast and strikes back. However, this isn't enough to kill the monarch of the beginning. With the last of his strength, Ligia warns Jin-Woo, as the battles between the inhabitants of your world and the residents of chaos become more frequent, your world will become a more intense war zone. I pray that everything you hold dear turns to ash, burned by the karma of war. Jin-Woo delivers the final blow, saying, "It won't go as you hoped," and a notification pops up stating, "The dungeon boss has been defeated. You have defeated Legia, one of the 9 original monarchs. It may take some time, as a great amount of experience has been earned." Jin-Woo picks up a piece of metal from the ground, saying, "It's too bad I didn't get any shadow soldiers, but I guess I'll take this as a souvenir." As Jin-Woo exits the dungeon, a notification opens up, informing him that he has reached level 122. The scene shifts to America, where a chopper has landed. Director Michael and Ms. Selner step out and are greeted by a national-level hunter, Christopher Reed. Reed says, "I wasn't expecting visitors today." Director Michael tells him, "I have something important to discuss with you. Would you mind asking everyone to leave?" Hearing that, Christopher instructs his secretary not to let anyone near his room until his guests leave. As they sit down, Christopher asks, "What brings you here?" He informs them that he won't be participating in some S-rank gate raid that has spawned in the east. Miss Selner tells him, "That's not what I'm here for. There's a more serious problem." She tells Christopher, "You may be murdered in the future." Angry after hearing that, he tells Lady Selner, "I have not forgotten what you've done for me, but we're not close enough to joke around with each other," and says, "Just who the hell are you talking about here?" She tells him she had a dream about him. "In my dream, you were surrounded by men." Christopher tries to stop her by saying, "You've come all this way here to spew this bullshit just because of some dream you had?" He tells her, "I know what you did for a living before you awakened. There are rumors about the source of your unique ability, that it's rooted in the fact that you used to be a psychic." With a serious look on his face, he says, "I'm a national rank hunter. Nobody can kill me." Calming down, he asks her, "Let's say I believe whatever you're saying. Then will I even go to ask for help?" She tells him there may be someone who could help him by telling him about Jin-Woo, saying he might be the only person who can help you in this situation. The scene shifts back to Japan, where Jin-Woo is coming out of the S-rank dungeon while thinking, "I had to kill the king. That was the correct choice." He exerted a suffocating amount of mana despite having his powers sealed away by those strange chains. "It's a good thing I was able to discover his true intentions before that could happen." Fast forward, we are told that news spread quickly around the world that all the giants had been eliminated, and there was talk on social media that a new national-level hunter had appeared. This time, what was different from the Jeju Island raid was that it wasn't just Korea saying this, but the whole world. The giant that managed to get across the ocean was taken care of by China's Rise Kong. In Japan, the head of the Hunters Association, Matsumoto Shigeo, turned himself in and confessed. Perhaps he wanted to take some sort of responsibility for his actions, though his purpose was unclear. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in eastern USA, American hunters who had successfully cleared an S-rank gate were preparing for a government-hosted celebration party. We see the same scavenger guild members discussing their recent victory in the S-rank gate, saying the government went all out on this party. While Thomas Andre was approaching them as he does, he reminds the men, "You haven't forgotten about our bet, right?" He reminds them they had bet their yacht and mansion, and asks the third man, "What did you bet?" He tells him, "I didn't bet anything." Andre gets in his face, saying, "That's a nice tie you got on." After that, he asks his assistant, Laura, about his looks. She tells him, "This looks expensive, but it doesn't go well with your Hawaiian shirt." Taking it off, he says, "That's what I was thinking too." She reports to him about the list of participating guilds in the upcoming International Guild Conference, saying Korea's Ajin Guild is also included in that list. He asks about the guild and Laura tells him, "That's a new guild in Korea that Hunter Jin-Woo created recently." That piqued his interest. He asks, he would be coming to the US then? Back in Japan, Jin-Woo, after clearing all the dungeon breaks in the city, was standing in front of the giants that he managed to convert to his shadows, commenting, "It's a shame we let one get away across the ocean, but with this, our forces have grown." Everyone standing behind him was amazed to see his power. Seeing this, Jinho smirked, thinking it's no surprise they were shocked seeing Jinwoo's ability for the first time, and noticed Hankawa, who was telling him that there was someone on the phone asking for him. After answering, he was surprised to hear what the person told him. He tells Jin-Woo that he has to go back to Korea. Jin-Woo asks, Is everything okay? Jin-ho tells him, I'm not sure, but I've been told to return as some family matters have come up. As he leaves, he thinks, I've never heard Mother's voice so shaky before, and wonders what could be wrong as he arrives at the airport. He is greeted by his father's assistant, who tells him they have prepared a car for him. He tells Jin-ho that he must brace himself in times like these, saying, I will explain everything on the way. As they arrive at the hospital, he sees his father who has fallen into eternal sleep. Jin-ho tries to enter the room, but the assistant stops him, saying, You can't go near him, as the presence of a hunter who cannot control his magic will only exacerbate his condition. He hands him a notebook, saying, It's what your father was working on right before he collapsed. I've been holding on to it in case he wakes up and looks for it, but it seems like you need it more now. As he looks inside the notebook, tears start to form in his eyes as it contains the articles of him and Jin-Woo. Seeing this, Jin-ho comments, They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He's still got the same habit of scrapbooking every article he likes. The secretary tells him, You and your siblings' competitions, exhibitions, and concerts, he had been storing them all, even your recent ventures. It's not that the president didn't love you. It's just that his expectations for you were just as big as his love for you. After that, the assistant tells him, Let's take you to the residence. As they start to leave, Jin-ho senses something and turns back, but there was no one there. The assistant asks him if everything is all right, and Jin-ho tells him, It's nothing, and they start to leave. After they leave, we see Jin-Woo, who is watching him using his ability to go invisible, standing in front of his father. He says, He is making me all emotional, and opens up a bottle of potion. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Jin-ho's sister, Jin-hee, had arrived to see her father as she was walking. She noticed Jin-Woo walk past her. Looking at him, she wondered what Jin-Woo was doing in this place. Ignoring that, she started to make her way to her father, and to her shock, as she entered the room, she saw her father had woken up and was looking at her. Seeing this, she became emotional and started to cry. After some time, doctors arrived in the room and explained to her that her father had woken up from an eternal sleep, saying this had never been documented before. I can't even imagine what the media would have to say about this. Outside the hospital, we see Jin-Woo saying, It's a little early, but happy birthday, Jin-ho. After walking for a while, he decided to head back to Japan, but as he looked at the shadow exchange, he noticed it still had 1 hour and 54 minutes left. Asked him if he was going to call this a coincidence. Adam told him, It would be nice if you thought it was, but that would be difficult to
Get out of this place
Yeah,
because of its
We've only met once, but I see you still remember me. It's an honor to see you again. Jin-Woo thought it was Baru who just told him from the shadows that his name was Adam, adding, "You can't get the name wrong this time." Jin-Woo asked, "Weren't negotiations halted?" Adam replied, "I know it's rude to see you like this without contacting you through the proper channels, but I have something to tell you." Hearing that, Jin-Woo asked if the United States was unable Adam told him to watch it until the end, that he then explained. It was Christopher Reed who caused this fire. 1,800 firefighters and 14 top